Hey everybody, this is Emmy Thomas. I'm here with Andromeda. Andromeda, I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody, which is what is it like to be you?
Um, obsessive, uh, curious. I'm always either distracted or enthralled in something that I either just like have to know the answer to, or I have to get the experience of, or like a cat, I'm just like, oh my gosh, what is that? And bemusing is a word I would use the last few years of my self-discovery as you as one changes and you get to know yourself and then you change again and all these unexpected things happen. You're just like, I wasn't prepared for that. Not like you can be, but as you do that and you get closer to yourself and you feel more, it can get it can get really, I would say, bemusing. It's just like, oh, okay, that's how that works. Neat. Not how I expected it, but and also want to capture the like experience I have when the like some profound part of something, like a eureka moment hits me, whether I am just looking, let's say, out at the trees, and I remember a friend of mine who's a civil engineer, she once told me trees have negative pressure, and for some reason, I realized some other aspect of my life, maybe not even fully related, or I realized something about gardening or engineering, and I go, oh, that's why that's such a big deal. And that just aha moment of delight and inspiration of just seeing a beautiful truth that and being in awe at complexity all around us, within and without. That's what it's like being me.
I love it. I love to learn things, especially I love that feeling, the eureka moment that you said. And I also love the unexpected too. Like I love the feeling of being tickled, like tickled pink. Not tickled physically tickled. I hate that. But tickled, yeah, like the emotional state of being tickled. I love it. I find that to be such a pleasant sensation. Like if I could just have something that would last forever, it would be being tickled, the permanent state of being tickled. I think that's why I like to have like novelty, interesting situations, but also like, joy in the simple. And I think I like being around children because often children they will tickle you.
They'll give you that bemusement or pass their own bemusement on, right? Like
Yes.
speaking of children, I think I kind of project that onto my cat, showing her love, you know. I'll be excited to see her or just loving how excited she is to see me. And I'll be like, is it Farvel? No
Mm.
way. Yes way. No way. Yes way. Like, like I'm talking to a toddler or a toddler's talking to me in that like, no way. There's this brown fuzzy piece of putty made of parkour with knives for hands that just like likes me for some reason walking around my house
Uh-huh.
and she's just like singing at me and rubbing my leg. No way. Yes way. And she definitely does that. She definitely does that to me and I try to pass that on to that little fuzz face.
That's nice.
Um, you know, now that I think of it, that's not the only cat I've done that to. My previous cat. Uh, I just say his name, Dog. Oh my God, it's Dog, and I'd be like petting him all aggressively. He really liked that. Like I just wanted to give him that just insane excitement of like, yep, I'm here, but you know what? You're here, and I'm all over you, you fuzzy fuckface.
Yeah, I have like 19 nieces and nephews, so I've never needed pets or whatever, but I could totally see it. And in fact, my girlfriend has this little stuffed dog. And the thing I've done with my stuffed teddy bear that I've had forever is just find the identical ones of him and buy them off of eBay. So I have travel versions of him everywhere. So I can travel with him still. And so we're trying to find the travel version of her little stuffed dog. And I enlisted my whole family on this.
Oh my
Like I was like,
gosh.
here's a $200 finder's fee for anybody who finds, a version of this dog that we can buy like a child. But there is something about, like, I don't mind at all being childish or childlike, is usually what I think about it, because I think that the children and kind of animals, this is true too. There's something about consciousness and even self-consciousness that seems to be like a poison if you get too much of it. And children don't seem this way about things. Children are able to engage with things in a more direct way. It's like fewer layers. It feels like between them and the thing. I mean, it would be like I have never myself worn like a condom over a penis, my own penis. But I would imagine it'd be like that. It'd be like how many layers upon layers do we have kind of separating us from the experience of the thing? And children, I tell the story all the time about my watching my niece when she was little, like 2 or 3, and they're filling up the sand pit at the beach, and she just has like this little small cup that she just keeps filling up. And even after all the kids have moved on, she just keeps filling up the sand pit. And she was so, I mean, it's such a fool's errand to try to fill up a sand pit at the beach because, the
Yeah,
water table.
yeah, I was about to say she's discovering the majesty of the water table, right? If you go to let's say New Orleans, and you dig a hole, you'll get the reverse where the
Yeah.
hole fills itself up
Hole will
and
fill itself up. Yeah, exactly. So, but she was just doing it for like an hour, and I spent like 30 minutes just watching her do it. But she was so kind of engaged in it. And that's
oh, I got the word. Marvel. It is
Mar
marvelous to be me. I am
oh,
marveled all the time. I like marveling people. I like passing that on. There we go.
yeah, I love it. Marvel. Man, I wish I could have more Marvel. But that's when I started thinking, I was like, man, she is engaging with the world in a very simple way. She's not outcome oriented. She's not thinking to herself, like this all depends on me being able to fill up the sand pit or something. And I thought, like, how many ways do I kind of do that to my own self? Like every day, the thing that I really want to do is walk in the beach, walk in the water in the ocean. And every day I have this like weird fight with myself recently where I think to myself, oh, but I have other things to do. But then there's always time in the day, there's always hours at night or something when it's too late to really appreciate the sun because the sun's gone or whatever, that I could be doing the stuff then. And or like, what is the point of life? Like really, what is the point of life? And that's one thing that I often push back on people who just everybody, who's like, oh, it can't be this way. It's got to be this way. I just think, then what is the point of life? Like, what is the real thing that we're trying to get to? Why am I not just allowing myself to wake up? Because I'd be happier, I'm sure, if I just allowed myself to think every single day, I'm going to spend at least 2 hours, hour to 2 hours walking in the ocean, listening to my audiobooks, because that's the thing that really makes me happy right now. And that's not always going to be true. And I think to think of that about children too is interesting, where it's like children are that age for only so long, and to just realize like to kind of treat myself as a child, I think is really
Yeah.
helpful. And so all this stuff, all this it's nice that you have your cats this way as like a reminder of thinking like this person, this cat, this being experiences life in this way, and kind of feeling more connected to that present way of being, because it's what they say, like you only exist in the present. There's only you in the present. There's not you in the past. There's not you in the future. There's only the present moment, but we often do not live in the present moment.
Yeah, cats are Cats are all that for all the good and bad as anybody would be. Yesterday I started putting together a a new gaming chair with my housemate, and the cat just comes in really interested, and I'm like, this is not a feline activity. You are not assisting, but
Mm,
that's not what going through the cat's mind. She's just like, ooh, what are the people I like doing? What's going on? And all the times a cat is a pain in the ass like that is just because they're so intrigued and enamored at the moment and nothing else. And that's probably a big reason why we can be so patient with their buffoonery and when they're
mm,
hard-headed, 'Cause it's I would say it's never malicious, but it's never um I would say it's relatively innocent. I mean, cat cats cats know theft, cats know evil, cats understand naughty. You know, my cat will try to get my attention by causing problems in my room or somewhere in the house, and she knows she's not supposed to do it. Cats can, but where it really comes from is just, oh, please pick me up. Please play with me. I'm just kind of hungry. Hey, the outside's really great. Even when they're being manipulative fuck faces, it it is, you know, just to enjoy life and with you. And it still always comes from that. A cat trying to shove its face in between different pieces of a gaming chair. Eh. Same thing. Ah. What's mommy and auntie doing? Oh my God, what's it? This is not a cat activity. I do not need any cat assistance. Uh, and I guess it's just that deeper place it comes from, even deeper than intent.
mm.
It's beautiful. And cats are like that. That they I cats are one of the few animals I envy, because they seem to almost always have a perfect balance of like self-awareness and self-consciousness versus experience. For the given cat, my previous cat was much more situationally and interpersonally aware. I could run up to him at like Mach fuck and stop within like a quarter inch of him, and he wouldn't move because he knew I wasn't going to hurt him. But if my friend went to walk over him and he's not sure of his mannerisms yet, he's just like, oh, I'm gonna get out of the way. Um, or my other friend that I used to date, dog would make sure to lock eyes with them because they can be clumsy, they have ADHD, etc., and he'd treat the people different individually. But somehow that doesn't never seem to get in the way of him just doing, you know, whatever he really wanted. And it's majestic. It's beautiful. And, I guess that's a good point. I didn't really realize that the cats in my life reminds me of that. And of course, they put me in that space of being there with them, right? And the cat's in my arms, and I'm just petting her, and she's going back forth between like, oh my God, I gotta rub your hand. Oh my God, I gotta rub your face. Oh my God, I just want to lay in your arms and be relax and love you in this moment. And she'll just go back and forth between whichever one suits her in kind of rapid, uh, almost nervous order, because she's very affectionate and very stir crazy. But I'll be with her in that moment of just like, oh, okay. And the moment she goes to put her head up, I'll apply my face to her face, and there'll be mutual face application, and then she'll lay in my arms, and I'll be scritching her, and etc. And it's wonderful.
It's interesting that you say that the you think that the cat your cat, doesn't have like you mentioned the word intent about the cat. And I wonder, is intent necessarily the word here, or is it, it's not even the cat's intent to kind of be, I don't know, because you said the cat is intending to be naughty, but it's more kind of like nature, right? It's just the cat's nature, and the same nature that allows the cat to be, as you say, have the perfect balance of awareness of self, like a self-consciousness versus its context. The different people that the cat's encountering, the different, I mean, cats are amazing about this. They fall off of a height or something and they're able to perfectly rotate their body in the perfect amount of time to land with their feet down for the most part. Like cats really do illustrate this, I think, well, a perfect balance of awareness of their self versus their context, like interacting like joyfully in their context from moment to moment and understanding their position in that context, understanding their own selves and understanding their own physicality and their own as they're kind of moving forward and the different people, like the different ways that people react to them, I think.
Yeah, you like your cat can just be in your arms and you can just drop the cat and the cat will land like it was always planning to come out of your arms, right? There was this one comedian where he was explaining that he accidentally, absentmindedly just dropped this person's dog because he's a cat person. And he's like, you can't do that. Dog, you gotta like help him up like a little old person. And a cat, you can freaking pull a cat. And you can. You got a hardwood floor, you could slide the cat across it and it'll just look at you funny. Um, and maybe with mirth even. But an interesting tidbit about the reality and mechanics of a cat. Someone recently asked me this, and when I had the answer, like, what's the maximum distance you can drop a cat? And in a way, it's infinity, uh, because there's like this middle point of where it's actually worse. It keeps getting worse until it gets higher, and then it starts getting better because they have all the time in the world to drop, and they're never going to get hurt more.
Hmm.
But there's this middle amount of height where they don't necessarily have enough t time to self-orient, and the height is also kind of high. So, if I'm not mistaken, you could like it's more dangerous to drop a cat off of like a roof than it is the Empire State Building, some sort of something like that. I don't remember whether it was like 25 or 35 feet, but they'll if they have all the time in the world to prepare, there's only so hurt they can get. They're kind of designed to fall. Not that they don't do that to themselves all the time, right? Um, but they'll engage that instantly, and it's amazing that they can engage it with awareness. If let's say you're on top of a bunk bed and you're snuggling with them, and you're doing something and it starts to get and they start to fall off, they'll very quickly grab or whatever they got to do to try to not fall off, or they'll prepare, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I got to land here. They do it with as much instinct as awareness, and just on the drop of a dime, it's it's beyond magical. Love cats.
But I feel like too, this connection between cats and children, for instance, it seems like children also, I think, have this good balance of awareness of self versus the context. I think that the thing that I'm thinking of, the layers upon layers, is too much awareness of self, maybe too much awareness of context sometimes. It really depends. And I think this idea too of their intent versus the nature, like kids can have very naughty intents, but it nobody gets pissed because it's just the nature of the kid to do the particular thing. And it makes me wonder to like what extent are we focusing a little bit too much on intent when we look at other people and kind of assess, are they a good person or a bad person? Somebody I want to be around or somebody I don't want to be around, a good candidate for this particular thing or a bad candidate or kind of do I trust them? Just all these little assessments that you might make of people. I wonder to what extent we kind of focus on intent, like in this way that doesn't make sense. We overfocus on intent instead of thinking about nature. Because when you understand that somebody's nature is to do a particular thing, I think it's easier to see them as they are in reality and meet them where they are. And instead of trying to understand intent, which their intention is maybe even like the least relevant thing about them. Uh, if it's kind of like if you're looking at like the cats, you're looking at children kind of thinking I've like never thought this before. It's crazy too because in the law, intent is major. It's basically every crime, every tort for sure has an intent requirement. Interestingly, not in contract law. Except if you intend to contract is the only time that we look at intent. But if we're looking at like causes of action, things that you can sue people over, or you can be a defendant in any type of criminal or civil litigation, intent is often going to be a factor. But it seems so kind of it seems like that I think in some ways is the reason why I have layers upon layers, in this corrupted way of engaging with life is that people have taught me to focus on intent and actually it's not as relevant as I have previously thought. I'm sorry for hijacking this conversation.
No, no. Hey, it wasn't your intent.
It,
But
it definitely is my nature, though.
right, right. No, no, because really what's the point of us being here, right? To engage with each other and learn about each other and have fun. And if we're doing that right, if we're doing that well, I'm sure we're both going to inspire each other to find these sorts of discoveries or insights, etc.
Eureka.
Right? Those wow moments. Because I maybe nature is the word I'm looking for, but that is why we can be so patient or forgiving or even delighted in the mischief of children that it comes back to that they're just trying to play around, really. They, people might say it's because like they don't know better. They don't know that that could or couldn't hurt somebody, this or that. They're just doing something because it makes sense versus what they know versus what they're feeling at the time. I
You,
think, huh?
I even want to push back a little bit on this idea of knowing better. Do you think that the knowing better, like they don't know better? Because then that seems to kind of push it into this weird adult no man's land of joylessness. To think know better suggests like now I'm going to impose intent again on you. Because like the same kind of like mischievousness, I guess, that leads to them kind of being naughty or whatever is also like the magic that leads to them, filling up the sand pits and believing in Santa and like giving each other a hug when the other one's hurt. It's like it comes from the same place. So why are we kind of saying I like some of the consequences, some of the ramifications of this childlike way that you engage with the world, but others know, and you know what I'm saying? Like they don't know better. I'm kind of like is it more that they don't know better, or is it more just that that type of engagement results in good things, quote unquote, and bad things? And it's just kind of like anything. It's like you eat a cheeseburger, you get protein and savory. You eat ice cream, you get less protein and sweet. It's not that ice cream's better than cheeseburger. It's just they're different, and not one thing can be all things to people. So when we say that kind of children don't know better, when they're kind of being mischievous. It almost seems like a weird kind of perfectionistic standard to apply on anything that like something that could have like the freedom and the willfulness, to do all the beautiful things that we love children and cats for, would also, you know what I'm saying? Like it's almost like being angry that coffee tastes bitter, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. But whereas the bitter comes with the roastiness, etc. You
Exactly.
know, I like if coffee's not too hot and it's been brewed well, I think it's often better black. You taste more of the coffee. I only ever put like creamer in coffee. I don't want to put sugar and really wash away the rest of the flavor. And I do genuinely like bitter things, but it's still not the bitter thing. Bitterness isn't the reason I'm coming back to coffee, though. The bitterness gives this contrast, like the same reason I like dark beers, stouts and porters. You know, you'll often see like a coffee milk stout, and there's this savory sort of sweetness in it, and the bitterness of the dark beer brings out that greater dimension, but not because the bitter is bad or good. You know, bitter on its own is bad. It sucks. It's good in context with other things. And that's when I enjoy bitter. I wouldn't want to just like suck on bitter juice,
Mm.
whatever that would be. But you if you took the same flavors that are in um a coffee stout, a coffee milk stout, or a chocolate stout, or a beer, and you took the bitterness out, it would just be like, why am I drinking a bland, alcoholic frappuccino thing? What is this? It's better with the bitter.
Yeah.
Um, it's a sum of its whole. Uh, it got me to thinking of that we start sorting all these things into good or bad and values judgments. It feels all connected, you know. We're we're trying to judge whether somebody is overall good or bad, as opposed to good for us or bad for us, or good for this situation or bad for this situation. And, we're trying to assign a value to it as opposed to, relevance or saliency or, just or applicability even. And it's funny how we need quite adult minds, developed adult minds to talk about it like that. But a child will just do it, right?
Yeah, the child
And
is accepting. The child's not like spending 3 layers of filter, being like, before I do this, is it good or bad? They might be like, is it scary? But they're not kind of like, before I even say yes, I'm going to try to guess a million things about what this experience is going to be like, and is it ultimately good or bad? Or this person or whoever. I mean, that's the reason why they get into vans with with dudes who are offering them candy. They have like this trusting thing, but it's kind of good. It's like it's not as bad as we make it out to be. Like the children are not stupid. It's not like their way of life is so terrible or something. Like their way of life is enviable. Like maybe I should be getting in more vans, if that's the trade-off.
man, if we you know, if we take a healthy adult mind to this, if we t say that it's bad for the child to jump into that van, that's victim blaming, right? That means some adult is taking advantage of this child's nature, right? Not the child is not doing anything wrong. They're doing something that's unhelpful for them, but they don't know that yet. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. You know what is kind of, as you were kind of talking about this good versus bad, I thought there are certain things that we are better at and thinking this just is. You know, it has its good and its bad. And I thought, you know, when we're talking about people, I actually think we're pretty good about that when it comes to and pretty good. We're pretty good at getting that balance, let's say, of like intent versus nature, of self versus context. We're pretty good about that when it comes to like genders, when we're thinking about the genders. Like we may kind of think like, okay, this gender trends this way, and there are certain things about it, like it's just different. You know, it's just like vanilla ice cream versus chocolate. And it's even though you can say, like people always say this, like, oh, psychopaths are so violent. And like this, I have repeated before and will say again, if you do like dirty statistics, it does involve like some cherry picking, but you can get here. Back of the envelope statistics, you can show that you take two blank
Hmm.
people, you make one male, you make the other one psychopath. The male is actually more violent, statistically more violent than the psychopath is. Like, we are able to think to ourselves, it's fine for us to live along amongst men.
Abs Absolutely. I
We understand that there's a trade-off there, and we're
Yeah,
okay
t
with it.
to to totally. You know, as a trans woman, I've been helping this trans dude I know recently, and he's autistic. He struggles with a lot of self-esteem and shame and whatever, and I'm helping him talk himself out of that. But one of the things I posted on his Facebook, because it was really screwing him up. You know, he came from this life as of living as a woman, and he's getting accustomed to that, people publicly will judge him as maybe dangerous. Not
Mm,
necessarily, right? But people will take a risk assessment and go, I don't know that I should just be friendly with that random dude walking up to me on the street.
hmm,
And between his shame, it makes him intensely uncomfortable. He has trouble not absorbing that. And so I I think that's something that men and women simply have differently, because now if, you know, he, trans men tend to pass a lot easier earlier. The testosterone um gives you facial hair, gives you widow's peaks, and we start off default in life with female vocal cords technically, and it gets heavier, right? So, the testosterone naturally deepens his voice. People just think he's a dude, not a trans dude. They don't know. And if something happens at
hmm,
work or at a get together, like at a party or at a game night or at a game store, wherever he might be, and you know something happens, he could just take somebody aside and explain it to them, and the person would be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's right. I'm sorry that happened to you. I had the wrong impression," and they would trust him instantly. And often women are not given that on one-on-one, right? But women are given that when it feels more third party, when there's distance involved. You know, a random woman uh walking down the street, and stuff is falling out of her
hmm,
hands. People will tend to not judge her as having it all together or whatever. They'll just walk over and go, "Oh my God, she must be so stressed," and try to help the stuff back into her hands or something like that. But, you see that to a man, you go, I don't know if I help him, will he take that a little further than I think? And da da da. So I don't think that it's squarely one way or the other. Like I've had to experience that. I used to be a machinist. I'm a saleswoman nowadays, and before being a machinist, I was a mechanic. And I was only a machinist for a little while as a woman, but nowadays I still work on my own car. I help my friends with their stuff like that, and it was a new experience. my friend, uh, when we were living in Kentucky, uh, a series of like cascade failures happened to their car. I was trying to fix one thing, and it aggravated an odd issue, and it broke their I think it's actually hard to be sure. Their engine computer. It's if you turn this car on and off really fast, it has this rare flaw.
Hmm.
And but at first the it wouldn't recognize the chip in the key and it wouldn't start. It's still a normal looking key, it's that era. And the flashing key light pops up on the dash. And so I don't remember what part of the process this was, but I have a fancy car scanner from my dead father, and I we went and got a new computer from a junkyard car, and I was using the scanner to remarry it, to reprogram it to the car, which you can do, but you need like a nice car scanner to do that kind of thing. And so I had this car jumpered to mine because it's critical that um, the voltage doesn't go too low. You corrupt it, and it could write dirty memory, and it's not a computer. It's not like a
Hmm.
desktop computer. It'd be ruined. We'd have to go get another one.
Yeah.
And this guy just thinks this guy is just freaking mowing lawns. He's on like a ride-on mower or something, and he thinks I'm just jumping the car or something. And I have the jumpers on for a much more
Ah.
sensitive and vital thing. And he goes to reach into my Mercedes trunk where the battery is, and I'm like, "No, get your hands out of my car. Don't touch my car." Because he thinks he knows, getting this reverse experience of like one-on-one telling him, "No, no, I know what I'm doing." That goes away, right? So I've had that flipped. People trust me more innately in some ways, but in other ways, uh, they don't. Um, but I say that, and there's blessings to it too. I think I just had to learn the social language because most of the time, if a dude comes by and I'm working on let's say my car breaks down on the side of the road, and unless somebody is quite a competent mechanic or they have a lot of time on their hands, whatever, they're going to be more in the way than helping me. And, you know, they drive by, "Are you good?" And I can just say, "Yeah, my boyfriend's coming. Don't worry about it." And they're like, "Okay." Because dudes are receptive to you in a healthy way to telling you it's not your problem. That's okay. I don't want it to be your problem. It can be as much. And they don't get caught up in their head about whether it's for them or for me or both, right? In that case, it's more for me. If they were really helpful, if I knew somehow that was another good mechanic and I could have another real pair of hands on it, yeah, that would be great. But uh, I just don't want them screwing me up,
Hmm.
or telling me like they know better about this stupid mechanical conveyance that I love for some reason.
Hmm.
And because I find women will have often have trouble not staying concerned. They'll be worried that you don't want to tell them because you're uncomfortable, you're scared, shame, whatever, right? They're trying so hard to help out the inner side of you. But when it is just surface, or just the interior doesn't matter to the other person and they would just muck things up, men are more receptive to that. But again, women women men can be oblivious then to people's interiors in that way. I would just solidly agree. I don't think it's one way or another. I have lived both of these lives. I've lived as a man. I live as a woman now, and in my personal opinion, it's because we separate ourselves like that. We separate ourselves with these assumptions of gender. We that men are good at car, some really surface stuff. Men are good at cars, women are good with babies, or just or deeper stuff, women are caring, men are selfish and dangerous. Women worry, men take charge. Um, because we do that and we place ourselves into that box and then we place other people. I've found women often judge men in an unfair, just maybe less disgusting way than men unfairly judge women, but often more insidious instead. Like the guy was always setting out to really make somebody uncomfortable, or just like they must have done everything in their life to lead up to this point to just not care about how people feel when they do an action, etc. And often that's the nature of men. They're not worried about it. They're just doing whatever. And then they find out, oh man, that was making the whole room uncomfortable. I'm sorry. Then when we don't give them the benefit of the doubt, they don't get that feedback. And I've seen, knowing some cis dudes, normal knowing and seeing and knowing trans men as they're coming into this culture later in life, I've seen that with adult minds at like both stages of like it's been ossified to some degree. Some dudes I talk to, they're already so accustomed to that they shouldn't look for that feedback because it's going to be like poison. Versus the one trans dude friends I'm talking about who's looking for that feedback, and I'm just like, I'm not, that's what I'm trying to avoid really. He's gonna get some comments from uh other cis and trans women that he's gonna know on Facebook. They're gonna be like, yeah, I know that's they might be a lot kinder than this, but it does still kind of boil down to, yeah, that sucks. That's just what you got to do living as a dude. But the reality is, women have that too. You know, if I went and complained about the person trying to reach into my car's trunk and maybe screwing up my friend's car computer I was trying to flash, yeah, that's what I get living as a woman. And in reality, I know the person's intent is to just be like, that is kind of it, how it is, but don't worry, there are these positive things. When somebody's in that mind space, that's not where they are. My friend is not my friend's mind is not on the other plus sides. If he's looking for that kind of like support, that kind of better perspective, he wants someone to remind him that this is not all it is, right?
Yeah.
And that's something I pick up on, that women often don't understand the message they're giving men when they really do think they are trying to help, but they don't understand it from their perspective. And I remember living as a man and having these not understanding, so far away from understanding of like, why do I feel weird that this very gendered thing happened, and not knowing there was something deeper there, and then women trying to comfort me. You know, they didn't really understand my perspective, and I think part of it was just them assuming my perspective. Uh, because once I came out, my trans friends, depending, some of them are like, you've been around people. You've been around trans people for so long. We knew it was just time. But some of them are, the switch flipped overnight, and, you know, they're like, yeah, I know you haven't shaved yet. You're still finding your way. We literally all start there. But hey, girly, and their assumed perspective of mine completely flips. that's something that's hard to be succinct about.
Mm.
But you're quite right and you're quite onto something, I think.
It's so interesting, this idea of telling you like they know better is something that drives me crazy. I do not have the same experience of having this shift, Well, I guess I do because they either know me as Jamie, not the psychopath, and then they do know me as Jamie
Oh,
the psychopath. And that shift is so unpredictable, I think, for people. For me to know in another person, is it going to like what's going to happen when I flip this switch? I recently came out to one of my bigger clients about being a psychopath, and my girlfriend was like 10 out of 10 nervous. She even accused me a little bit or kind of questioned me. She's like, "Is this like something, are you feeling like particularly self-destructive right now? Are you trying to burn things down? Is there
J-
something like about
Jamie,
life
yeah. Yeah,
that
Jamie, you dumb, bored, stir-crazy motherfucker. Do you just want to find out what happens right now? Because you're about to, yeah.
like throwing in the Molotov cocktail or whatever. She was like, and not just for like a couple days, for like several days, she kind of felt this way and would even kind of like, she even got angry at me at one point and was like, I'm annoyed with you for doing this.
Have you found that dichotomy too among our community of the people who are just like never tell anybody, that's bad for you, and why would you want anybody to ever know? And then the reverse, like you and I, is just like I don't get how your head's so twisted up about this. Like I don't tell everybody. It's just like, do you think I didn't like go, I think this would help? I I don't tell the like frankly, if someone came on to me in public and maybe they were saying some weird things that let me know, but I was interested in them, I'd be like, babe, I'm trans. Are you sure you want to keep? I'd be more inclined to say that than to tell them I'm a psychopath. But any, I don't tell the gas station clerk that I'm
Yeah.
a psychopath, but I might tell the gas station clerk I have, boobs and a dick at the same time.
Mm,
But do I tell my friends I have boobs and a dick at the same time all the time? Not unless they're another penis woman, when
mm,
we're joking about it. But or we're talking about our body experiences. But will I tell them about my psychopathy? Totally. And,
mm,
for a ton of reasons, for them as much as me. I I want to be less masked around them if I can, I want them to know that often I process things in this academic way, but it doesn't mean my like regard or my caring isn't necessarily there, I'm operating on my desires and values. Sometimes I'm more in my emotional self, but the the course of me trying to do the things, it still boils down to me, but I don't want to have to pretend I'm feeling another way. Like just like this one friend I blocked again recently. He really pissed me off. I was talking to another woman, a mutual friend of ours, and I found out that he does um this same like using people for their emotional and sexual, depending, not sexual with me, but sexual with her comfort, um, instead of patching things up or getting rid of his girlfriend. And it just pissed me off. But the important part here is that the first time. The first time I was sad, but this is just like now I'm fed up and I'm angry that he won't be such a stick in the mud so he can be my friend. Because you know what? He's a pretty good friend. He's a really good friend. Otherwise, he's a really great guy. And it pisses me off that he is so bad for me at this point in his personality disorder fucking bullshit that I have to not sacrifice myself and protect myself and I can't just chat with him about cool shit. I And with the wrong person, I do worry if I say it that way, will it come off as selfish to the point of, you know, maliciousness or not caring. Some people can be really witch hunty with that, right? And you never know when you're going to run into that person.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have to be that with my friends. I want to be authentic with them. And again, I want it just as much for them. I want it to hopefully either put them at ease. Um um One friend, housemate, uh she's young. So we're a little unsure. We've talked a lot. She's opened up to me in a way she hasn't with a lot of people, but we're both getting to the point where we think she's schizoid in some way.
Mm.
She's definitely schizophrenic, but I don't think it's like a level of to a personality disorder, but there's a lot of signifiers there, and it's relevant because the fact that I'm a psychopath means that our relationship day to day, month to month can vary, right? And I won't get upset that if she's stuck in a room for 2 freaking weeks or something. I won't suddenly react to or feel this loss of like, oh my God, she hates me. Oh my God, what did I do? And I won't judge her for it. And when she's open about some of the nasty shit her schizophrenic brain puts her through, or the fact that she is really interested in horror and gory stuff because it's not unlike the crazy stuff that goes on in her head. It lets her laugh at it. It makes it fun, and then it's like a roller coaster. Roller
Mm.
coasters give you that fear of exhilaration, but it's the right environment for that fear and exhilaration that makes you like the fear just distinctly. And so it's good for her, and she doesn't have to feel like I'm going to put a value judgment on her, right? Because that's not what people are to me. I don't care. I don't fucking care. How are you to me personally? How are you to the people I care about, I value, I want to keep around? Um, yeah. How good or bad are you actually for me? And between these two things, it gives her that emotional safety and that lack of fear of being inherently judged. And she's able to open up to me. So, but being open about my psychopathy to her, you know, gives her that not like blank check. We have a weird relationship that would frankly probably make somebody else uncomfortable, or because you're touch and go, because that's what schizoid stuff is like. They want their emotional safety, so they'll have like half friendships. They'll have jobs that are at night that they don't have to deal with anybody. Um, she wants to be able to always be in control of that emotional connection and never have to get further than, let's say, halfway. And that's either not enough for some people. Some people won't see the other values in the life outside of the direct emotional connection, right? Or they'll feel the distance growing and they'll, in my opinion, overvalue that when like everything's fine. She doesn't have to worry about that. And being point blank about it to her, again, gives her that permission to do it, but it lets us talk about it in a deeper language and a more honest language too, right? That I'm less filtered about how I feel about things and I can be more like, oh yeah, here's a good example. Um, she does some things with me transactionally
Mm.
deliberately. She is going to give me her TV, but the prices I've helped her with some stuff with her controller, and I'll help install the TV on the wall, right? And those are well-defined terms to her, and that gives her reassurance, right? And that's not weird to me at all. And the fact that there's other parts of her life that aren't transactional all at the same time, that doesn't spin my head. And again, I can, one day I'm just like, hey, do you think it helps you that for some of our things we have a transactional relationship? And she's just like, maybe. And so, yeah, telling her I'm a psychopath has helped both of us on all of these levels. It's funny how it really is just like an authenticity thing when it boils down to it, right? And a connection thing. Um, which I guess is why we get so frustrated when people react to it weird. My recent experience of the switch flipping like that was there is this guy I saw and we went on a date and I ended up talking to this other person because I'm kind of I can one of my roles I play is like the nerd collector and he was in charge of or second in charge of this little Smash Brothers tournament. They like literally had like a GameCube plugged into a TV in the back room of this arcade bar, right? But it's a real tournament, etc. So that means he knows other big freaking autistic nerds. And I have plenty of those in my life. And it's be like, okay, I would like to be able to connect these people. And I only wanted to get to know him enough to like know what his interests are and get his contact info, but that really left this guy spurned on our date. And I wasn't prepared for that, but I tried being honest to him that like, I'm gonna take that into account. It's hard to promise I won't do that again. I tend to just do that. And I but I wouldn't say I felt bad doing it. It made sense to me. Um because I wanted I wanted to open up that honest dialogue of like, please don't make me pretend to feel guilty. Please trust that I can care about the relationship or the friendship without performing guilt or shame for you because that wears me the fuck out. And that's what I tried to start. And a couple weeks go by, a couple dates get canceled or rescheduled, and he's just like, I can't get over the fact that I like know for a fact that you do that to me again. And I'm like, what a dick. I told him right off. It is absolutely not that set in stone. But you know, I do need somebody who gives me that sort of freedom because that's the kind of person I am. If that person is into whatever their interests are, I'll be looking out for people to connect them with in other social situations too. That's one of the roles I play. And if you need me all to yourself all the time, eat my tranny asshole. You know, I just like in certain circumstances, I get like you see that was the thing, the way I processed it. Like It was our first date. Yeah, okay, that makes sense that he would think he'd have me all to himself in that period of time. That makes all the sense in the world to me. But the stories he told me of previous women, it that's just how he is. And um I really overthought whether that was a good idea or not, or like, or if I was being a cunt face to him, or like, um, or if I was too honest, etc. And too honest, what a word. And no, no, he would not have been. He was really fun. I was just disappointed that he was interesting, he was fun, he was attractive. Um, from what he told me, it honestly sounded like he was good in bed. I was excited, and you know, he needed to be a dweeb, so he can go be a dweeb. So I've had that switch flip for the psychopath thing too. It's not as often, but it's really weird when you're really honest to somebody about that. They just get so irked that your brain didn't shoot you up with brain chemicals because you did something they didn't like, you know? Um, it's really funny because the fact of the matter is I wish that would do it that that would be done to nobody. Nobody needs that. Nobody needs the shame. Guilt at least has a function, but I don't know that it needs to be as heavy-handed as it is in our neurology. Guilt's supposed to be a lesson, but shame's an extension of it, and it's a garbage emotion. It's self-reinforcing like depression is. It doesn't have an extinction behavior, right? Like fear does. Because someone will get self-conscious and it'll amplify the shame, and it changes the person's frame of mind, and they find more reasons to be shameful when they're trying to defeat the shame. They have to like force themselves to have a certain mindset to pull themselves out of it slowly. Or like, guilt, basic CBT can talk you out of unhealthy guilt, right? But shame gets people to the core, and it's pointless. I don't wish that upon anybody. The world would be better without it. And that's it's frustrating. A little bit of misanthropic rage there. Frustrated more at the world because I don't know. I'll see more dudes. I am seeing another dude now, and he's really cool. So like, whatever, but it is something we reinforce as a society socially to we shame people if you don't pass value judgments on people because you're supposed to be a good person and not let bad people happen, right? And that's part of this responsibility of being a good person is to call people out. Something I see in this trans space, a lot of trans women are very leftist, further than just liberal, right? They'll be socialist or communist, etc., or effective altruists, or some people will try to yell at me that that's not leftist, and I don't care what they think. Um, uh, or transhumanist, etc. These and in that space, there's this like purity culture that you see a lot of conservative American politicians and pundits. If you say you're one of them, they'll be like, "Yeah, come on in," and they'll greet you. Um, and honestly, they don't have enough standards. But it's such a reverse extreme in the leftist sphere, and especially among queer people, trans women. It seems to just be magnified, to be a bit galvanized, that people are often focused on not doing anything wrong as opposed to doing something right. And of course, then they project that. And that's what you see from multiple perspectives about, call out or cancel culture that uh you can see some shitty conservative takes and you can see some decent conservative takes that aren't unlike what I say here. Uh but that's the part of cancel culture that's bullshit. People not letting anybody ever do anything wrong and forgetting what the person did that they did right in this world, as if they're not going to do wrong. It's so sanctimonious. The only way you could morally stand there and be justified if you had not sinned first and you can get to throw the stone. Not even religious, but that's exactly the right parable. There's no way they can stand there and act like they haven't hurt someone unintentionally before. We're humans, we're complicated. We get hurt for things that don't make any sense. It's not under their control. Well, that was a rant. I got frustrated somewhere in there, and I don't that brought out some like misanthropic anger of some sort.
Yes, I loved it. I loved it. You know what? It kind of reminds me this idea of like people being human and complex. It kind of gets back to this like idea that we were talking about before. It's the nature of the cat, it's the nature of the child to be mischievous or whatever. And this idea of seeing things in complexity and nuance and not forcing things to be kind of things that they are not naturally, to focus on the intent over the nature. Because I think nature always has nuance and intent is just, I think, like a cheap way of trying to simplify things into a paradigm that's artificial that we're then going to impose on other people and children and cats and everything, of a lack of nuance, in which if you have this intent, that's good, you have that intent, it's bad. And this nuance thing of, where I mentioned before, I think that gender is a good place where we actually are very comfortable with seeing nuance. And maybe it's just because it's so common to us. I actually think gravity, the concept of gravity, is a really good example of where we see nuance. I was reading a book about space. It's called Atmosphere. I think it's Taylor Jenkins Reid. I always like it when people tell me the exact thing so I can do the thing if I'm interested.
Same,
Yeah,
same.
yeah,
Or at
exactly.
least at least to get a summary, maybe it'll turn me on to something else, right?
Yeah, exactly. So and it was just interesting because it takes place in space. It's astronauts in like the early 80s, American astronauts. And they talk about gravity a lot because they're trying to do different things in space. They're trying to like, wrench things or whatever in zero gravity, and talking about like the idea of being in totally neutral gravity is kind of terrible because you cannot move. You can only move in relation to something else and your own body, right? But your own body's just pulling, it's just muscles pulling against the bones, pulling and releasing, right? So the idea
Right,
of,
yeah, like
yeah,
astronauts on a spacewalk have to stand on something to have the counter torque to use a freaking ratchet, right?
yeah, like stuff that we take for granted about kind of gravity. And gravity, so I think gravity is like, is it good or bad? It depends on if you're falling from a tall building, and if you intend to do it. I guess like it is just it is the thing, it's the fact of gravity makes certain things hard and other things possible. And that's just so true about everything. I think that when we think about when we intentionally try to abstract these things and be like, I'm going to remove this from every context kind of its good. And I'm going to simplify it to this thing that I can then say is bad. with like kind of you mentioned with this purity culture, or not just the purity culture, but also these people that you mentioned before, people telling you things like they know better. You know, like they see something, they see you working on the car computer and they think woman, you know? And then they
Yeah.
think I'm going to reach in. Can you imagine? And like
Yeah.
touch somebody else's stuff because they're so certain. They're so certain that this paradigm that they have imposed on reality, it's not reality. It does not reflect reality. The map is not the territory. But they have lost the ability to see the nuance. They've lost the ability to understand that the representation of reality in their mind is not reality. Like they think that it is reality. They somehow have like gotten absorbed in kind of this world in which there are layers upon layers from reality, but mistaking it from reality. And that's one thing that I get kind of annoyed too with when I do kind of flip the switch and come out as being a psychopath is that people treat me like they know better. It's so funny. I've started posting more frequently on like Instagram, and I have a TikTok, whatever, and I get people's comments all the time. There's one where all I talk about is the first time that somebody ever called me a sociopath. That's all I tell the story about. And there's like dozens of comments being like, therapist here. This person's not a sociopath. They're autistic. Like,
Oh my God.
just dozens of comments of people just being like, I definitely know better. I even get this in the Discord where it's
We
like people are like, I will tell you that this experience you've had, Jamie, is 100% inconsistent with being a psychopath. And it's like, whoa, okay.
again, right? Like, okay, fine, you can do that, but eat my tranny asshole, right? No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
Uh,
it is funny because it's like there's something about nuance you can tell that they cannot handle, but they can handle it when it comes to gravity. They can handle it when it comes to gender. So it's like, why can't you handle it when it comes to some of these other things? Well, I mean, you know, gender, you've given a bunch of examples where they can't handle it. Or
right.
where they rely too much on the simplification. They rely too much on their abstraction. You know, their inability to just kind of to see people as they are and not just substitute label, you know, white, female, trans, psychopath, you know, educated, uneducated, you know, blah, 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 blah. They're making all these kind of weird judgments. They have like this complicated kind of labyrinth of understanding the world instead of just putting the labyrinth aside. Like they have like this taxonomy. Everything they see either goes in one place or goes in another. You know, I have on my walls, people have like mentioned The Little Prince. My
Yeah.
family loves The Little Prince. But there's a character in the book and in the movie, I think. My family loves the movie.
It's the one with the moon thing, right? The Little
Uh,
Prince?
yeah, he has a asteroid with a rose on it.
Okay, okay, it's an
Yeah.
asteroid. But yeah, go on. Just I wanted to know I was thinking about
Yeah.
the same thing.
And
Yeah.
he's traveling to all the different places. One of the places he's traveling to is this guy who just wants to count stars. And the little prince is like, why? You know, why are you counting the stars? But these people who want to kind of like, as they take in information, they want to immediately pigeonhole. You know, they want immediately want to kind of label this. And I do think that you have mentioned an instance in which it happens, in which I think it leads to really ridiculous results, which is the far left. And I actually see it. I have acquaintances who have children who are kind of in this world, and I feel really badly for them because the children seem so afraid of making a mistake. Not making a mistake like, you know, getting caught with like a joint or something,
Right.
getting caught, you know, skipping class. Not those sorts of mistakes, but a social mistake that they're then going to be labeled bad, some sort of phobe, some sort of, you know, whatever is the kind of slander that happens in these sorts of situations. So this type of kind of abstract thinking where we're going to refuse to see nuance and we're going to insist that we know better And we're not going to think about it in terms of gravity. We're going to think about it in terms of this made up world in which we've just made a bunch of false dichotomies. And people are either this or either that. Oh, I got this recently. Somebody was like, posted something about like, even amongst minorities. This was such a controversial video. I was surprised. Even amongst minorities who you basically can predict that they've experienced depression. So those people, I would think, if you've experienced depression, then you wouldn't go turn around and oppress people. And I think part of it is, Inigo, a couple videos back, I think he's called pro-social psychopath or good psychopath in the title or whatever. He was saying last time, he was like, why would you be something that you hated? Why would you do that? So I would think, okay, you're a minority, you've been oppressed, you wouldn't choose to oppress others. But I was like, but they do. Some minorities do, and who knows what it is about the advantage of oppressing others that encourages them to kind of do this. That was so controversial, and somebody was like, "This you must be MAGA for even posting this, for even saying this." And I thought this is such a weird dichotomy to have, is that if I'm not saying the thing that you think I should say, then I can't be X, therefore I have to be Y, the opposite. So if I'm not saying, if we took this and kind of applied it to the far left, if I'm not saying something that you expect me to say that is good, then I'm bad.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
even,
like
there's a separate definition of bad. It's just, this is good. And if you don't say this good thing, you are bad. And I was like,
yeah.
this
It's
is
a sta
crazy.
it's a
There's not a
standard.
dichotomy. It's like a spectrum. Everything's a spectrum, except when it comes to good and bad.
Yeah. It's really fucked up and tense that like you have to see that in your acquaintances kids of like that they're not worried about being bad, they're worried about not being good.
Yes.
It's insane. It's hard to describe. Um it's hard to put into less words than I've already put in.
And it's so hard to apply that to people is dehumanizing. Because it's kind of like I can imagine this happens with any types of people, but I could imagine, let's take gender, since we've been talking about gender. Like if I expect, male to look like this, if you are not this, you are not male, and just kind of all the different ways that we require people to conform to our artificial constructs that we've decided to impose on people, like shackles, preventing them from being their authentic self. And this is something I wanted to ask you about. You said that you don't want to mask around people. You want to be less masked around people. And then you
Right.
mentioned the ideas of authenticity and connection. Can you say more about if you think there is a relationship between masking and authenticity and connection?
I think there is. You know, let me think.
It's a big
Because
question.
it is. I know for a fact there is. I just find I have no words for it yet. Interesting. I think about crap nonstop, so I'm more surprised I didn't like obsession hole my way into 10 paragraphs about this already. Um, let's see here. It's
You want me to go on to something else while you think about it? I have a list of things to ask you about.
Yeah, sure. Something I wanted to bring up though is eventually I want to talk about Jean Baudrillard's simulacra and simulation. Because that is the philosophy that is, actual codified philosophy around the mechanisms and how to discern between reality versus reality as you think it is. And
Let's
the
hear
way
it.
he,
How do you spell his name?
Jean,
Yeah,
Jean
Jean-Paul I got. And
Baudrillard, Baudrillard, double L.
double L. Okay.
Yeah, it's French, ARD. Jean Baudrillard.
Baudrillard. Baudrillard. All right. I want to hear it.
Yeah. So simulacra and simulation. he discusses something he calls the hyperreal, and it's really taking that idea of the map is not the territory is not the map, and to its kind of ultimate conclusion. Because what has happened is the map is the territory. That's what has changed, and people's awareness that the map is not the territory has been lost. So, the stages are, 1,000 years ago, there were no real borders, right? No strict borders. And the land that a fiefdom or a kingdom or a empire could control are the ones they could control, right? And the borderlands were always less organized. And we were describing reality and then saying, all right, now that we know this, we'll draw out the map. And then eventually, we started treating the map as the initial truth, and now we have to write down the borders on the ground of what's on the map, that
Hmm.
it's the reverse. But what eventually happens is it becomes just the map, and the map is untethered. It's circular. The map is based on the map, and that is a hyperreal. So like that's when our that's the kind of mechanism of where our brain goes from borders are where uh the police can stop me in this county versus that, or America versus Mexico, right? Into uh once you cross this, you're supposed to have this whole culture. This After this 1 millimeter of sand, maybe literal sand, it's s physically different. And we treat um we we treat them as truly different. And we know we do. When you see movies, oh, we need to make it look like a third world country. All right, put haze in the air. It needs to be Mexico. All right, make it red, right? And it literally is put into this other box in the zeitgeist and in our minds of what Mexico is. It's we're A and they're B, because Mexico encompasses all these ideas like over unified of what we think Mexicans are, what we think Mexican governments are, the cartel, etc. And it becomes this entitled hyper real in the same way that, you know, in the same way that Europeans don't really see a difference between Americans' dumbness and not using the metric system
Hmm.
and our border and our driving and being fat, and it's all one unified thing. And so that's the hyperreal. And so in order to be able to discern this difference, you need the concept of the hyperreal. Hyperreal is this idea that you've taken as tangible, that you're now treating as more tangible than reality. And of course, the reality is we do have ideas that are just going to be ideas, and they're supposed to be. But when we no longer differentiate between them being ideas as reflections of reality versus, like our best guess of how things are right now, knowing that the map is not the territory, but somebody went out and cartographed it, right? That it is an attempt at a representation. But does it identify every literal sand grain? No. Once we lose that, we start seeing that um like here's another example. Way back when in the 90s,
Way
when
back
you
when.
yeah, 36 by the way. Way back when in the 90s, I'm having to realize I'm not young anymore. I don't know that I feel old, but I have to remember I'm not young anymore. It helps living with like a 20-year-old housemate too. You go, huh, okay, yep, I'm not young anymore. But you know when you installed Windows, it used to have that like representation of the time zones, and you'd like click where you are,
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
right? And I think it was literally like 1 pixel. And if I'm not mistaken, it was like Pakistan versus India. It that the map they used was just a hair off of what the uh, political leanings were. And, Microsoft had to change that or it was going to get kicked out of the subcontinent. It's because those people were taking that map as an opinion of Microsoft's,
Mm.
right? They were taking that map as a hyperreal, that this must be what Microsoft thinks is the indelible truth, and that there was no difference between any of these, when really it's just this thing to let you know you're here in the world, click there, that's your time zone. This is your computer. It's supposed to keep track of the time for you, and that's all this is really trying to do. And yeah, it's really that they see this map and they think that this must be Microsoft's opinion, this over unification of nature or intent versus uh, their own idea of this representation. None of it feels different to them. They're treating it tangible. And you see how that's not based on anything, right? In none of this description do we ever talk about where the land actually is or any of the history or the actual impacts to anybody's lives of this map's inaccuracy, right? I didn't say, well, this confused somebody and they had the wrong time and it caused a plane to crash, or this upset somebody online that was this upset somebody when they saw it because they were there when it was war torn. We haven't discussed any of that. It has never come back to physical reality, to people, their actions, their experiences and consequences. It has stayed in the land of the hyperreal. And so this map is a simulacrum, right? In plural simulacra. And we are simulators, and we are simulating that this map is this representation of these things. So these people are simulating that this map is this representation of this political stance or historic or opinion of historical conflict, whatever. And they're using the map as a simulacrum in part of the simulation to maintain the idea in their head in this loop. And so another way to kind of unmask this concept is how religion evolved. You know, in earlier religions, when they said once a year, uh, I believe it was Persephone, um, leaves hell and goes to see whoever. Well, back then they would literally take the idol from one temple to the other because the idol was either seen as literally the god, right? Or a manifestation in some way. Or literally, they're like, this is the god. If you broke this, it would be literally world ending or something. And they did that with like other myths where they had conjugal visits where they fucked once a year or something. And I'm not sure that that didn't happen. I don't know enough of the story, but then once you start to realize that they're idols and that they are supposed to be once you start talking about them like they're representations and that the supernatural aspect, the element isn't there, like I don't think the supernatural element isn't there. It is there, but the people authentically believe this idol is a supernatural thing, right? That was to them tangible. Once we say that it is a representation of the supernatural, the process has begun and it's basically inevitable. Because then, we've seen this in Christianity, you know, where we hit that point in Christianity was selling pieces of the cross Jesus or another or a saint was on, right? Where you don't know that it is really was. And there's no way there could be that many pieces of wood that were that. But some priest, some cardinal, some clergy sold this or gave this to you, and it's in a vial or it's in something and it's on your mantle or whatever, and you treat that as this actual holy relic. But if you unmask the simulation to discover that that piece of Jesus's cross is a simulacrum, and that you discover that nothing is there. You just have a piece of wood in a jar, in a vase, in a vial, whatever on your mantle. The only thing that was there was you simulating that it was this holy relic. And that's it. Because like somewhere in between were reliquary boxes. Reliquary box uh Traditional Christian reliquary boxes would have like the bones of somebody that was considered holy, and something you could do is pour water. Some of them you could pour water into it and then the water would come out and you'd say that's holy water. And so that was somewhere in between in this what Baudrillard calls the procession of simulation, or the procession of simulacra. At I'm not sure if it was simulacra, simulation, or representation, but his word was procession. And it comes from Jesus did this, and that is holy, and this book is an account of that. And so the account is literally the word of God to these bones are a representation because they're from a saint to, oh, this is a thing from a saint that was the representation of, and it becomes untethered. And now it's a simulacrum. It's and we simulate to keep this hyper real, this whatever concept it is that we believe is tangible. Like other ways that you paid the church, the Catholic Church money for no good reason would maybe be like or do things as confessionals, right? That has to be maybe the most nonsense thing of Orthodox Catholicism is, like some priest hears you say it and then the three Hail Marys is lets you go back to heaven, right? As if the words of supposed words of Jesus didn't say that it's about living your right way and the belief, and if you have both of those things, you're going, don't worry about it. If you're authentic to that, none of that's there. So the simulation there is the clergy, is the organized religion. And one of the simulacra are the confessional booths. And the simulation is going to this, going to confess to the priest. And the hyperreal is the concept that these clergy are ordained in this way and that it results in them being able to forgive you like God could, right? The concept of how of whether you're going to heaven or not and how the church is judging you. That's the hyper real, right? This I don't really know what to call that. I exited Christianity at like age 19. long story short, college sucked so bad, I knew there wasn't a God. That's not really totally accurate, but it's funny to say it that way. But that's, things were so bad, and I knew that my praying wasn't making anything better, and among other things, and I just put two and two together and got five, and I let go of my religion. But they holiness, that's it. The hyper real here is holiness, right? The holiness of the priest can bless you and allow you to still be holy. Not good, not altruistic. It's not based on works,
Hmm.
right? Works are tangible. Works are actually something that that concept is something that we could that secularism can probably take more from organized religion of like you're not what you say you are unless you act on some of those beliefs, at least sometimes. And I don't know that that's devoutly true, directly true, really true, right? But it is helpful, right? The world would be better if people did a little more nut up and shut up, good or bad, we would find our way forward. Um, but holiness isn't in any of that tangibility. Holiness, holy water, right? Like I said, you pour the water into the reliquary box or you pour oil through it to anoint somebody with, and now it's holy because it touched this one holy relic. And now they can say holiness is something that can be in this piece of Jesus' cross that's in a vial, right? It's been anointed somehow. Or now I can anoint this water and it's holy just because I said so and I'm a priest. So here, holiness is the hyperreal. And I think that actually completes it because that's um even within, Christianity, we you could go through the history and you can see that procession happen. And the outcomes of that, right? And the results. And so yeah, the simulacra and simulation and the term hyperreal is how we can differentiate between these because we need a third thing, right? We need a third word for idea as tangible, but not one that because it's useful and we believe in that because it's helpful, right? Like if we said you're not really what you say you are unless you act on some of your beliefs. I wouldn't say that's a hyperreal. That's not holiness, right? That is an idea, that's a belief, a concept. It has this purpose. But the purpose of holiness is holiness, right? That's it. It doesn't base back anywhere. And so we can talk about these things and differentiate them. So we need this third word, hyperreal. And yeah,
I,
I completed that.
I am convinced.
Yeah,
I think it's so interesting. Especially this idea, kind of like going through this idea of okay, you're representing something, but as you go through this procession, then it becomes untethered to reality. The thing that used to represent and be a representation of reality becomes untethered. Why? Because it doesn't seek to track reality anymore. It becomes what this the hyperreal and this idea of holiness. Like if we took this back to apply to the purity culture of the far left, for instance, this kind of concept of like it doesn't really matter actually the full rightness and wrongness of a person, if we could even say that about a person, the nuance of a person, because what we're really just identifying is the hyper real idea of good, let's put it in quotes or capital G good, the good of the far left. I'm a good person or something. And what does that actually mean? It's not, I think, connected to the reality of the person anymore. It is more like the concept of holiness, in which it means
I know what the word
basically
is.
it derives from something or it doesn't
Ethical.
derive.
Ethical instead of moral.
Is what?
Ethical's the hyperreal here.
Oh,
Moral.
for the far left?
Yeah, yeah, that you need to live ethically
Mm.
because you're supposed to have ethics, and the purpose of ethics is being ethical, right? You know, right? You know, because whereas if we're more fine grains, we can, you know, it is helpful to the individual and society to be altruistic. You can make a statement like that
Mm.
and etc. That that is what ethics originally tried to represent, right? And it did. There is still a philosophical study of ethics that is honest, but the societal view and treatment of ethics no longer is. We simulate ethics so
Some
that
people do. Yeah.
we can be ethical. Right. The purpose of ethics is to be ethical. And it's actually a shame that the philosophical study of ethics is actually pretty cool. So it's a shame to see that. I'm not sure the philosophers even realize that has happened to them. Except for Jean Baudrillard.
Yeah.
Because he, you know, he literally wrote this. Uh, yeah, people are afraid of not of being seen as unethical, which is not being bad, but not being good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
that's it.
opposite of good. This
Right.
good being this list of characteristics that we have deemed good.
Yeah. And
The
this
same
is
way
one,
that the characteristics, we just say the characteristics derive essentially from from the reliquary. Like we poured water in there, the water came out, that water's good, like it has that same sort of logic. When you drill down into like these good or bad kind of things that people think are good or bad, it really is like that. It really is like, okay, it came from, we say in law, the fruit of the poisonous tree or something about
right.
evidence that was improperly obtained, and that's what they're really talking about is it's like improperly obtained stuff can never be good. It really is from its origins. It feels like it comes from the relic. The relic is connected to this. The relic is like three stages away, three representations away from reality that was originally good, but it's become untethered. And now there's no way that you can become holy except through this particular process that used to represent reality, used to represent maybe Jesus's teachings, and now it no longer does. But that's kind of even better for the people who want to create reliquaries and be the one who's in charge of the reliquary and be like, everything has to come from this reliquary. There's no path to goodness except through this reliquary that I made and am in charge of.
Right.
It's like now my territory.
Absolutely. Right,
Yeah.
right. When it went from like this is actually this saint's bones in this box to um a confessional booth, right? That's when it that's the point it became untethered in Catholicism, that the definition of holiness is dispensed from the priest you talk to. So the way you become holy is by doing holiness. What is that? Like you can't actually describe what holiness is, but it's only based on itself.
Yes,
And so it's
because you can't control reality. Not even really, not even borders. Can we really control borders is what we find, you know, debated in modern politics, but we can't. You're right. The piece of sand, we don't even have like walls. We don't even try to kind of police those things because we don't even care. The lines of the county or the city, they're kind of concepts that we don't even try to police, but you can control hyperreal. You can control the hyperreal because it's made up. It's made up and it's within your control. Reality's not within control. That's that's a reality. That's a harsh reality. But the hyperreal is totally within control. Somebody's control, because it's just something that you made up. It's kind of like open source code or something. It's just something that can be modified as needed or whatever. So it makes sense that people want to substitute hyperreal for reality if you have any degree of discomfort with uncertainty or lack of control. Then just go ahead and substitute concepts for reality and then do it almost like the guy from Memento. You do it so many kind of layers away, layers deep, that it allows itself to become untethered, and it allows you to not experience any reality checks anymore because there's no connection anymore from that concept to reality. And reality checks are like a bitch for people who have a hard time with uncertainty and who have a hard time, who live in this hyper-real world. I mean, they will ignore a reality check because it really doesn't have anything to kind of do with your hyper real. Like it that's the best part about the hyper real is it becomes untethered, I guess. That is the mechanism that allows this to work in such an interesting way. So I love this whole, especially the untethered part of Baudrillard.
Yeah. And yeah, isn't that fucking magical? It makes a lot of this make sense. I think the other half of it is people are so distinctly uncomfortable with unmasking it before you get there.
Tell me.
So like if when they started making relics as opposed to collecting relics in a reliquary box,
Okay.
and they were faced with the reality by whatever forces, right? If we could, then it would keep it from processing into us purely simulating and living in the hyperreal. Because again, once you hit there, it's people's discomfort with unmasking it to get that reality check, to discover that there is nothing tangible there. It's just your idea. It's just the hyperreal, right?
Hmm.
It's it's not that um if you met a devout Catholic, if maybe even they were a very moral person, right? And they tried to live those ways with some authenticity and consistency, but you tried to tell them that they didn't need to do Hail Marys every week to stay holy, they'd have a fit,
Yeah.
right? They would feel like something tangible in their life and act like something tangible in their life has been threatened because that hyperreal they don't realize that it is a hyperreal. They think it is just real. They're processing it as it's real.
Hmm.
I mean, we do a lot of things with this. Um,
We do a million things with this. That's what is like my mind is blown right now. I can think of like a million things. First of all, like religion, and then I want to get to like concepts like marriage and love, if you can help remind me. Like religion, because I went to like a couple of years ago now, I went to there's a Buddhist monastery close to where I live, and they were like it was Buddha's birthday or something. They had like a open Sunday, you can come, show up and participate or whatever. So I show up, and the guy talking, Thich Nhat Hanh, is the name of the this particular monk's monastery, so his like kind of branch, and he was kind of talking about who's now deceased or whatever, but he was talking about these ideas about Buddhism that okay, Buddha just has like this insight, this eureka moment that Buddha thinks this is better, life is better with this insight, and I'm going to teach people this insight and live according to this insight and explore this insight. Over the hundreds of years after, it's like layered upon layered, like it's simulacrum upon simulacrum, so distant and and just kind of like almost like varnish on varnish on varnish over things of separation to where parts of it become untethered from this key insight that Buddha had. Is essentially what the Buddhist guy is telling me. And he's like, and that's why we have all these weird behaviors and weird kind of beliefs that don't have anything to do with Buddha anymore. They don't really have,
absolutely.
yeah, they're like so disconnected or whatever. But people who are living, so if you're living lifestyle, it really kind of depends on like which kind of like, let's say, arm of Buddhism that you are kind of like focusing on, because you could be in total hyper real, uh, compared to what it seems like is understood to be like Buddha's actual kind of teachings. But then, like, if you think about the other hyper real concepts, I thought about marriage and love. Like, marriage has become such this weird thing. It feels so untethered from reality.
Marriage has more than one hyperreal, which is why
Yes.
it I was gonna take a I want to come back to the Buddhist thing because Buddhism is probably the only contemporary religion that attempts to wrestle with this.
Hmm.
So I want to come back to it, but I just wanted to take I realized in law that law's concept of intent is a simulacrum,
Hmm.
right? There because when you get down to it and you try to make societal change, when your goal is I want less crime because people are healthier in a world like that and it is safer, etc., right?
Yeah.
Tangible benefits, real, tangible moral reasoning. You at least one arm, you immediately like get like to communism in one shot and you go, it's the material conditions. And the reality is it's not only the material conditions, but you can no longer ignore that, yeah, when somebody has had a job, no job for 6 months, and they've been on five different couches. They're gonna steal to get to get those milk and eggs, and that can be, as human nature, a gateway into other things. And if we punish people for doing that, but they are not only not enabled, but inhibited or disenabled from becoming lawful, right? Then that's just the, prison industrial complex. That's just putting people in prison. That you're not improving the lawfulness of society
Hmm.
by policing um uh the ghetto for every single thing you can find. There's things they can't do, they can't afford. They've been disaffected by society, by forces they have no power over. And, the answers to these questions of how do we do this? How do we achieve these ends? A you know, a better society to live in, we come back to we need to try to support people. And there are going to still be people who misuse it. And there are going to be people that take it to the moon. And there's going to be people sitting in the middle that are just comfortable. But it will, and people get hung up on that part, right? That there will still be people that take advantage of, let's say, food stamps. But the reality is, if you provide equitable food stamps in a capitalist system, everybody's better off. It costs Walmart less money, right? Less theft happens. It's the
Hmm.
same. It's um consequentially, it's all connected. It's all consequentially the same thing, not the same concept, but the same system. And, if you're really honest about that, where is the intent to steal a TV so you can afford rent? You see, that's the lie. They've the hyperreal here is the intent to commit the crime, not the real intent is I need rent. And the only way I can get it right now, mixed with my skills and experience and physical location on this planet, is to steal something expensive and to sell it to somebody that somehow has money, even though I don't, and then hand it to a landlord. Right? The real intent is I need food and I need rent, not I intend to break the law.
I'm going to take it one step further. Can you guess where I'm going to take it?
Where?
I'm gonna say that intent at all as kind of like this standard, like we're gonna use this as a standard of assessing somebody's like the morality. I don't understand morality, but the morality of somebody's behavior is a simulacrum. This idea that we talked about earlier, intent versus your nature. Like nature really is just kind of saying the context of you, but this idea that we can kind of separate from a person, like this idea of intent and be like, this sort of intent, fine. This sort of intent, no. Like you're intentionally untethering it. You
Yeah,
you
yeah.
are trying to untether it because you're saying, as you say, we don't want to understand the context of people stealing because they need food and to pay rent. So let's focus on something different. Like you are intentionally trying to untether certain things so you can simplify them, so you can abstract them, so you can control them, so you don't have to be worried about being reality checked with something that is more complex than you can devise a system to accommodate.
Right. So I've been thinking about this, and I guess maybe it's just like I didn't find the word ethics before, right? And I'm searching for it. It might be more than one word here when it gets to law because it's so intermingled. Um, but I still do think you're onto something because
Thank you.
yeah, no, like because
I think you're onto something.
we both are. When you ask yourself the question, how does intent influence the outcomes of a person's actions or life? You get different answers. You get answers that are wholly irrelevant to how we enforce most laws.
And it's the same activity. It's that somebody has killed somebody, except there's just no intent. Like I actually think law and economics does the best with this, that maybe there's some connection between intent and like our ability to kind of incentivize things or disincentivize things. But I think that intent too, when we think about the concept of intent, it's tricky because I think that a lot of people kind of make judgments about psychopaths, right? Because we lack the right intent. And I actually think this concept is going to unravel. I see it unraveling in Mormon theology, where I follow some Mormon therapists and they're like there's like a Mormon concept. It's in the Bible too, but I feel like the Mormon scriptures hit on it more too, where if you don't have the right intent when you're doing a good action, the good action's not worthwhile or something.
Man, that's the
Yeah.
whole story of The Good Place, the show. You
Yep.
know, it was I remember the character I liked the most, Eleanor Shellstrop, who had definitely the best recovery arc. Like
You kind of can I say something about you?
yeah.
You remind me of Eleanor, actually. Now that
Yeah,
you,
no,
I'm not
that's
surprised to hear that you like the character.
no, yeah, no, she started out as this uh you know, unaware, selfish cunt face, but the show not only wasn't afraid, but pointed out that almost every time it was Eleanor who unmasked the whole spiel that they were being subjected
Spoiler
to.
alert.
Yeah, yeah. This old show.
Yeah.
The lessons here are too important to care about how people feel about spoilers.
Yeah.
They should go watch the
You need
show.
to watch the show. The show is nuts. The show I think is very eye-opening. It's like a morality play or something. I'm like, wow.
It is. It's actually a good one because, it's not that they don't shy away from the value that Eleanor has. They make it one of the centerpieces. That's part of her arc. The um Michael, right? She figures out that she's in the bad place. Um in a way, because she's a selfish asshole, she's not afraid to go, wait a minute. I'm not like any of you. And you're not as far away from me as I thought. This isn't right. It's one of the ways she figures it out, but she figures out they're being duped and being deliberately subjected um to hell as other people
Mm.
via Michael's literal design, right? Like, he gets Janet built this, and it's his literal design, and right? And she figures it out most of the time that she is the best and the right person to do that. They go into all the reasons why, her life experiences, her own choices, the kind of her parents, right? Um, and she is at first not sure of her worth, and she is always the person that actually brings people together. She's more healthily self-centered later, but she's still pretty self-centered. But she's the person that keeps keeps everybody from uh the that defeats the infighting
Mm.
every time. It's like that funny concept of like I would find you in every life in every universe, right? And Eleanor's is I'll catch that asshole in every lifetime, right? In every lifetime, I will not let you just be an asshole to each other because one other person's being an asshole to you. Not
Mm.
on my watch.
Yeah.
You know, uh, and it's kind of funny, I like to think that from Eleanor's standpoint, she's selfish because it makes life easier for her or it gets her what she wants, right? Whereas Michael is doing it because he's upholding this structure of judgment in the afterlife, right?
Mm.
So what's more authentically understandable? What's more understandable? What's more relatable? Michael or Eleanor? Michael has his growth arc too. And uh Eleanor's for sure, of course she was out for herself. She was taught to be, and in many ways she needed to be. And it doesn't excuse her of that. The show is very good about that. It's very honest. But yet, those are the things that set her up to have the lessons to A, keep people from tearing each other down needlessly, and B, figure out she's not the real asshole in the room every single time. That she's self-centered, not malicious, usually, right? She's not trying to literally enforce hell. She's just trying to get more than people wanted to give her. She wants all the shrimp at the party, you know? Um, and it's really funny because Michael tries to exploit that to the extreme. I remember in the first episode, she literally had the best person sash on her, right? He tried to exploit her narcissism to the max, and it was not enough. He couldn't do it because she unmasked herself when that moment happened. She's just like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Like, when being treated like the best person, she realized without anybody helping her, she wasn't, right?
Yeah.
Because she wanted to be that. She aspired to be that. She projected being a great person because it was useful. But, you know, she unmasked herself. And that was her willingness. Once she unmasked herself as realizing she's not only not the best person, she's actually a bad person, and she's here because it's hell. So I think that calls back to that. It was her willingness to unmask herself that gave her both the courage and perspective to unmask everybody else, either for to put Michael in his place or for the benefit of her comrades.
Yeah.
And of course herself too.
Then now I'm going to ask you again the question that I asked you before. You mentioned the concept of being less masked and authenticity and connection. Any thoughts on that?
Ooh, yeah, after this conversation. Um, yeah, because I'm trying to like untangle what's the difference between um that might be something I'm still actively working on understanding.
Yes.
Of that what is the difference between when I talk more openly? Well, like why do I feel better or why do I at least feel less weight? Why does it cost me less energy? And is it just because it costs me less energy? Is it because it makes me feel more seen? Sometimes it does. Most of the times it's just, you know, I feel that weightlessness that I prefer. I don't feel, and I'm allowed, and it gives me the freedom to hand that weightlessness off to somebody else too, and allow and help them free themselves,
Yes.
right? Like I was telling you with that trans dude, right? I try to help him free himself from his own preconceptions of gender coming from one way and to not hold himself down now that he is living his own more authentic life, right? Carrying those forward has now hurt him. I experienced a lot of the same things. Because I strongly identified with my man mask, with my boy mode self. And I took a lot of that from my father, and it was really a confusing jumble, identity wise. Uh, and when it comes down to it, I say stuff like, for some reason, our brain has an idea of man and woman, and society can put what those are in our brain, and we tend to do those. And it's ta neurologically tangible enough that when you're treated as one instead of the other, and your brain knows better, you can tell even if you don't understand it. Because I did not. I was so far away from my feelings. I unfortunately successfully memory hold my fantasies of being a woman I had until my like mid-teens. And I'd rationalized a lot of things away. Whether it was I masculinely coded something that was feminine, at least feminine to me, or I projected something extra masculine on purpose, or I said, "Oh, I do that because I'm a man," when that's not really why I did it, etc. And I reinforced those hyper real ideas for my simulacrum of being a man. Because for whatever reason, there is some simulacrum of being a woman, but there is some non-simulacrum. There is some reality to it. And it's difficult to pin that down. Uh but it's obviously there. I can't say it's not. When I come down to it, uh how people treat me, it at least doesn't feel wrong. Um uh Yeah, I need to get into that too, of like how psychopathy, specifically like how psychopathy and NPT2 influenced my gender transition and my difficulties there. 'Cause like I haven't really touched on which is which here, but I've described a lot from both. And um and some of them even coming back to my daddy issues, just like the the hyper real in my mind was I became more like my dad, etc. And I don't remember what it was, but just a couple days ago, for the first time in years, I allowed myself to go, yeah, you know what? I cut that motherfucker off because he was wasting my life. My dad would be proud of me for a healthy level of selfishness, right? That, it's a shame that this is going to hurt this person, but it's a bigger shame if I just keep letting it happen. and my feelings in that matter too, etc. Right? Really, the reason there isn't, lack of compassion or lack of empathy. It just enables or assists it. It lets it glide. I don't have to worry about his feelings, and but I'm still human. I'm still frustrated. I can't be his friend. I still like him, that hard-headed motherfucker. But I'm annoyed, of what he of how he has put himself and his girl between himself and me and himself and a lot of other people. Um, Man, yeah, you can tell it's complicated because it gets into those daddy issues and it gets into like and um it is really curious to me how much my personality disorders have influenced that in positive, negative, and neutral ways. Uh anyway, yeah, less masking. I'm gonna think about it one more time.
Yeah,
Just um
while you're thinking about it.
oh
It's
I
int-
got I got
you
it.
you have
I
something?
just
Tell me.
I just it lets me actually act on myself, and that feels gratifying. Like the other night, last night actually, we were playing some video game and just, some sort of boss fight or whatever, and the music was just peak for the moment. It set the mood. And just I know that if I was in that sort of situation and I needed to lay it down and commit some hyperviolence, and I wanted to A, do it the best I can, and B, enjoy it and really get all that rage out. Uh, I would be playing Inya's Memory of Trees album because in that moment, I would be setting myself free. I would be like, okay, I need to survive the situation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop people from hurting and killing me, and whatever A to B, that's what I'm going to do. I don't have to worry about it anymore. I am completely, um, uh, I can just act on judgment, instinct, and intuition and just do it, do it, do it. And that's part of it. It's it's the many little gratifications of being myself. And I just enjoyed sharing that with them because I wasn't hiding those feelings of like, oh yeah, if I was in that situation, I would be playing Inya because I love the art of all these body parts around me. It feels like a bougie throwing paint at the wall thing to me, except it's visceral and animalistic. And I can't say that kind of thing to most people, and I know that's not likely going to be a situation I'm ever going to be in, but that comes back to real parts of me that want to act on that animal in some way. Maybe not in that way, in other ways too. In the same way, anybody who gets to really gush about um, art or a particular car they like, whatever, right? They actually talk about what drives them, and you get to experience that among other people, and it's nice. Sometimes I am blessed with occasionally I'm blessed with the feeling of like being seen for it if I can tell the other person like really gets it. Um, but it's just nice to actually be able to act on myself without all of those layers.
Yeah.
It's actual gratification. Um, and I guess that's long story short, it's just easier and gratifying because I get to actually act on myself, not a conditioned or guarded version of myself, so I don't get excised from society in some way, or lose a friend that was fun or beneficial in some way for 98.5% of other things, and just this one thing, somehow that's the tipping point. And to me, it's the least consequential thing, but it made them uncomfortable. And to them, that discomfort is paramount. And finding those people is freeing. And it comes back to all the stuff you say about, like, you know, acting childlike, letting your inner child be your outer child, you know. You were going to ask me something else.
Oh, I was just going to comment about what you said about your dad. You said my dad would be proud of me. It reminds me, I actually kind of maybe about a year ago, I was like thinking these thoughts about Mormonism, thinking, I'm kind of like distancing myself from Mormonism a little bit, or from kind of certain beliefs, like the layers upon layers, like I don't want to be on that Buddhist arm, that's goof, as my girlfriend would say. That's like so far removed, that it's become untethered. I think there are aspects like that in all.
They've gone from enlightenment to woo.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Human institutions or something. So that was last year. I mean, I'm not like I have no sense of soul. I've talked about it in other videos, but I'm not in Mormonism at all. But like a year ago, I was kind of thinking this and I thought I have these Mormon ancestors and I am proud of them. Like I am proud of them for like leaving, their homes in Scandinavia, or most of the ones that actually emigrated because of Mormonism, leaving their homes in Scandinavia and like traveling across the ocean and then traveling across the country and doing these great things, things that I really find meaningful, like helping other people, etc. And I kind of thought, they have this long line of these, or I have these long line of Mormon ancestors. And am I betraying them in any sort of way? It wasn't even like I kind of cared, but I just had the question pop up in my mind. Am I betraying these Mormon ancestors in any sort of way by just being like, no, thank you to this, or at least some of it? And I had this idea that the thing that my Mormon ancestors cared more for was following the truth, like what they thought was the truth. And that's the similarity between me and them. That's the legacy that I want to continue living, even more than I want to continue living the religion that they chose. I want to continue living this idea of they embody to me looking for truth, thinking that they found truth, and doing everything that they could to hold on to that truth and live according to that truth. And that's the thing that I thought, okay, here's the continuity, and it made sense. And that's what made me think of when you said that my dad would be proud of me. I think that's really true. Another interesting thing about Mormonism is like this idea you said you can tell even if you don't understand it. And you said it with regard to like different understandings of your own self, I think, with regard to your gender. And actually, the Mormonism has kind of this idea in Eve that's a little bit like Eleanor what's
Shellstraw.
Shellstrop? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a little bit like Eleanor, where Eve is reconceived in Mormonism as not sinning, but as recognizing that something is wrong and thinking we're stuck. We're stuck in a loop that won't end unless we do something different. Like we have to do something different. The only thing we can do different is eat of this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so she reasons to that place where she says, hey, we've been doing this for millennia, for like basically an eternity. And this cannot be what existence was made for, to just live stuck in this loop, in this place, a garden, even if it's a beautiful garden, even if we have everything that we so-called need, that there's something more than this. And so she just kind of logically surmises it. And that's the reason why she chooses to eat of the fruit of the knowledge tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which I think is so interesting. And there's so many beautiful parts of Mormonism that, just in case people wonder why did you stay in Mormonism as long as you did, it's kind of stuff like that. It'd be like, this is such an interesting, beautiful concept that, and it reminded me when you said you can tell even if you don't understand it. that you are living in simulacrum. You have become you're doing something that's become untethered. You know, you can tell
Yeah.
that it's become untethered. You can tell
Yeah,
that
you're
there's
living a pure simulation.
if you dig
And
into it, you're gonna hit something weird. It reminds me, I just saw the movie Backrooms, I think is what it's called. It's like a horror film. And it deals a lot with these concepts or whatever, but in there are people who are kind of formed from memories. It's as if this place just forms stuff from memories but makes it physical. And one of the characters is like, it's crazy. The one of the best parts about this is you can eat them. And he grabs into the guy's abdomen, pulls out like this chunk, and
because it's
starts,
like he saw through it. He's like, this is memories and nonsense. Want me to show you?
yeah,
It's basically like we're in a tangible dreamland. Let
yes,
me show you tangible dream things. If you were in a dream and you were aware, you could be like, you're an apple, and the person would turn into an apple. He's lucid dreaming.
yes. It's a really interesting kind of exploration of that. But that's what it reminds me of. Like if you kind of like when you're in this untethered, you're in this place of holiness, you know, which is just some concept that somebody has made up and it's become enshrined, you know, in people's minds as something, but it's untethered. You know, like then you can reach in and grab it and it's not guts or anything. It's just it looks kind of like rice on the
Think about
inside.
it. Even that word enshrined.
Yeah.
Enshrined is the action of untethering it.
That's why I love the word reliquary, because like hilarious that we made up that word.
Yeah, yeah.
Somewhere along
Like,
the line, we're like, you know what describes this best? Reliquary. Well, place to put relics.
yeah. And it's even funnier because it's this middle point,
Yeah.
right? Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna bring it back to Buddhism. I think
Yeah,
Buddhism
I put a star by Buddhism, so good.
Buddhism, I think attempts it I think structurally, like organizationally, it's not organized in the sense of most contemporary religions, but what it is, it does try to structurally face this, and it also tries to do it individual. People try to do it individually. Um, I think one example, a really good example that watchers might connect with is Alan Watts, and he was an American Zazen Buddhism and a Buddhist, and my favorite thing he said is, once you get the message, hang up.
Hmm.
And there's like two parts to that, right? You know, that is so that the purpose of enlightenment doesn't become enlightenment and become this you're not simulating, and thus enlightenment is the whatever you do for enlightenment is the simulacrum, and you're living in the hyperreal of enlightenment. And but it also it does so practically, because the hint there is like, if you keep listening to the message, searching for more when there isn't any, you will find more, and
Yeah.
you will eventually untether yourself, and that is all encompassed and in and succinct in, when you get the message, hang up. And so Zen Zen practices have something called koans. I don't know how to really pronounce it. Koan. And there are these stories. Um, and like one is uh this guy coming in to be taught by this Buddhist monk. And the Buddhist monk is not really playing his game. The guy has a false idea of it. And so this is a story of some monk catching someone who's just living in the idea and pulling them out. Ah, man, I can't remember what it was, but it had something to do with him pouring tea into a cup and just not stopping. And I was talking with a friend over that koan, and you can pull so many lessons from it. But that's how all koans are and how they are supposed to be. The lesson you get from it is the lesson you get from it, right? And that's kind of a very American culture koan. If you get the message, hang up, right? That's a very American language. And you know what? He employs a lot of Americanism, and he employed a lot of Americanisms in his teachings. Like you'd say, like, when you Americans are so good at driving cars that we can actually enter a Zen state driving a car. If you're driving to work, maybe especially if you're the kind that doesn't like to get up in the morning and you've got your energy drink, your protein shake, and your apple on the way or something, and you're miserable. But then you show up, you clock out, and your next memory is putting the key in your door, and you're like, what the fuck happened? Because Americans, we are so accustomed to driving that it is like human and machine. We just do it. We take in all the information around us and can process it by both instinct and uh, discrete cognition. We will automatically discern whether we should go on intuition versus a specific decision. And even in that flow state, like a child, you may have gone down a different exit than you have before because something in you knows on Tuesdays at 3:30 p.m. it sucks, or that you left 5 minutes late and it's going to suck today if you don't, etc. And you may have made those decisions that were technically conscious and were not on instinct or intuition, and you will flow back and forth between them freely and do them expertly. And yet your next memory will be putting your key in the door. And you'll go, what the fuck happened? How did I not crash? I don't even remember opening the door to my car to get out. When did that happen? And that is, he explains that as this is the kind of state, this is what you want your default state to be. You know, he's very practical. He says it's not that we think too much per se. It's that we think about thinking without a purpose,
Hmm.
right? We we're not thinking because, oh, that's interesting to me. We're thinking out of habit to keep up either that simulation or some other simulation. And once you stop doing that, you can still do incredibly complex and nuanced things. And you might even do something spontaneous and completely new and not even remember it, even with something as complex as driving in rush hour traffic. And again, you're going to come out of that state. Sometimes you're going to be in the front of your head, like we at least partly are in this conversation, right? Discussing the hyperreal, the simulacra, and simulation. But we are doing it with a purpose. It is interesting to us to think about it. We find it useful. We have an intuition that it can be practical as well as interesting if applied in other places, right? We are doing it with a reason, not to habituate something else. And when you habituate one thing for another reason, that's when they become untethered. If 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 we still take driving and you don't allow yourself to zone out, even though you could, it'll be really vulnerable. I think I had this kind of thing with bedwetting, where I needed to let go and trust the process. I was in diapers until like, I don't know, 10 or 11 or something. And the answer was just stop wearing them and trust my body to do it. But I didn't want to be a bedwetter, right? So I was keeping that up. But once I let myself go, it just worked out fine. And in this, so I was no longer wearing those diapers because I was wetting the bed. I was wearing those diapers to avoid becoming a bedwetter, right? And so it becomes, and at some point, for literally no reason other than the habit, right? And that the alternative seemed uncertain and frightening, right? Like that if I if I stop these, will it happen again? But not based on the reality. And again, it was just habitual. I was no longer the habituation had become untethered from its original purpose and uh the reality of the time. It was just no longer relevant. So if you're forcing yourself, if you're not ADHD and you're forcing yourself, because they go through driving differently, I have it on good word. But if you're not ADHD and you're forcing yourself to be hyper aware of everything around you while driving every single time, are you doing that just because you want to be a good driver or not be seen as a bad driver? Right? You know, and eventually you just do it. It's not because you want to be a good driver, but if you go to not do it and you're afraid that it'll make you a bad driver, it holds you up, but you're no longer doing it to be a good driver. You're doing it purely out of habit. And that habitual thinking that is no long ultimately always brings you to a place where you're doing that sort of thing disconnected from the original reason. Because it is just habit. Once you're doing that for habit, eventually you're going to just do it. There is no reason. Um, and I mean, that makes sense structurally. The spontaneity is the opposite of habit. There's going to be things that you will do by habit, but you should also equally allow yourself to do things to be spontaneous and actually experience just experience, right? Our brains want to put another word there, but there doesn't need to be one. We're trying to find the simulacrum. We're trying to find the hyperreal. Just experience and feel the gratifying nature of just acting on yourself. And that's why like some that's why the good Zen philosophers and monks and whatnot I've seen come back to that sort of verbal structure of like just experience, nothing else, because they're unmasking it. They're desimulating it and bringing you back to grounded reality. And again, Alan Watts, I don't want anybody who's maybe actually learning something from this to forget Alan Watts very correctly didn't say there was anything wrong with thinking. That is simply its own action and should not be done out of habituation either. And, you would be doing that for a reason as well. That you might spontaneously think you want to go down this path. Like that's kind of what happened earlier. I'm like, there's a ton of things we've talked about and a ton of things we could talk about. But do you know what I've wanted to talk to Jamie about ever since I actually started talking to her and not just seeing her on YouTube videos, the hyperreal. Because I had this intuition you'd be able to take it further, and you have. You've taken it to law and intent. And I had no inclination to break that down because one of the things worked on with my psychopathy is actually being aware of my intent. Because I think, especially when we're in our playground era, we're not focused on our actual intent. And so but I think the reality there is that when you're not focused on your intent, it makes it easier to lie about it when it's convenient as opposed to with purpose, right? And then you'll habitually lie, not with purpose. Um, Same themes, same structure, same mechanisms. And B, fuck, what was it? You will be in the habit of not acknowledging the actual likely outcomes, the actual risk and benefit of what you intend to do, right? And then you're not making decisions based on that. And so, of course, you're in your playground era. You're not thinking about your intent, so you don't think about how it comes back onto you. Once you start thinking about how it comes back onto you, you have learned the awareness to start making better decisions. And so it's funny. It's been a big focus, I would say, the last year for me to be aware of my intent. But I did not realize that to some degree, I am simulating something with that too. And uh, our friend Dawn, with her rationalist stuff. Yeah, she's so good. Dawn and I have talked about the actual mechanics of agency and making decisions, right? Because, we will often narrativize something that makes sense but doesn't necessarily reflect reality or only partially does, I did that because of this, but really it's just a convenient explanation. And when you get down to it and you actually talk about what gets you to do things, it's like more about attention and focus. You know, if you're in bed and you're not punishing yourself for being in bed, but you're just not letting yourself do anything but think about getting out of bed or think about what you're going to do when you get out of bed. Eventually, your brain finds a dopamine impulse to act on, and you get out of bed. And it becomes about strategizing how, when, and why you practice deliberate intention because you don't want to have to do that all the time. It's exhausting. You want to be able to let your attention flow freely most of the time. And that's the reality of like some of the deepest self-improvement strategies when you face like actual brain chemistry and neurology and material conditions, etc., and what you're actually in control of. And I have a feeling these concepts are related because intent doesn't fit into any of that on the surface. And maybe it does or doesn't, or maybe I'll find that the word here we need is deliberate as opposed to intent, etc., right? And I'm not really sure, but I think this circles back to some really deep stuff about the natures of our just brains we have and the chemicals that they act on. Um, and again, it's attention and awareness. Once you're aware of that, it's difficult not to act on it. Because why would you just act against your interest? And not only that, why would you not act in your interest once you realize that that's what gets you your interest? Simple as. I don't need to add, again, I don't need to add any more fluff to that, or I would be starting to go in representations of representations. And uh, I think I can really take this far. I think one could say that Psychopaths have a distinct relationship with that. Often I see people working on not getting in their own way, right? Keeping themselves from acting against their interest. Whereas it just makes sense to me to act on my interest in the first place. And it's more about mediating how, when, why, and where. And so that's turned around on its head. And I think that's an actual, I think that is a better description of what makes us quote unquote neurodivergent. Again, I think neurodivergent has also become a hyper real because I've I still, I'm trans. Most trans women are autistic. Who knows why? But I don't tell them I'm neurodivergent because they'll often think that means autistic, and they'll make assumptions. And I'm quite good at um, understanding autistic people, and they often take that as a reflex as I must be autistic because they're so used to not being understood. And that's not unreasonable on its face, right? I know I'm the exception to the exception here. But if I tell them I'm neurodivergent, it reinforces that, and they start to apply on more assumptions unintentionally. Another one is they often put ADHD into that. Um, Whereas I feel OCD is definitely a kind of neurodivergence, just like ADHD. It it fucks with your time perception and attention just in the inverse way. When you get down to the neuroscience, ADHD and OCD are at the base a dysfunction at the two different ends of the same chemical feedback loop on your attention. So you could describe ADHD as like not knowing when to start, and OCD is not knowing when to stop, when it is finished, right? Like when I've done enough to be quote unquote certain. Whereas when people with ADHD talk to me, they tell me that everything seems like top priority. They can't get their brain to decide this is step one, so I can get to step two. And so that makes sense, and it fucks with you in this certain way and colors your thinking and perception in a similar manner. It's neurodivergent in the same way, in my opinion. But um, I've run into cases where there's actual resistance to talking about it, uh, like it's neurodivergent because nobody relates to it. Not even because there aren't a lot of autistic OCD people or autistic OCD trans women. I know plenty of them, but for not as for one reason or another, they don't make the same communities, and you don't end up there. And it's just how it is. Why, I don't know, but that means I can't talk about it with them, even though I know this is another way that makes me different in I know it's a similar enough struggle because I was misdiagnosed with ADHD as a child. If you tunnel vision on something or you take something to the 582nd step when there is only two or three reasonable logical steps, they view that as distraction. And if you just have anything else going on in life, bad family life or comorbidity with anything else that gives you hyperactivity, they put those two surface things together and go, you've got ADHD. And then they give you stimulants or similar, and that makes OCD worse. Stimulants will make me tunnel vision too hard, like it does for a normal person, but uncomfortably, or it'll make me chaotic and ADHD like. When I got the Panera had those like nuclear super caffeinated lemonades. I went and got them just to try it for the novelty. I knew the writing was on the wall, and I had to try it before it went away. And because I don't think you can really get it in the same capacity in the same way that like you can't get caffeinated for Loco now anymore, right? And yeah, that was the moment when my one friend I used to date went, "Oh no, you don't have ADHD because right now you're acting like you have it, and this never happens. You've had way too much caffeine." Like, ah, yeah, okay, I knew it. Good. Um, but yeah, that misdiagnosis on those surface things. So I know it, people have similar reactions to it. It gives me the same sort of resistance with people, even if in my own life and internally it's significantly different. And that commonality is difficult to talk with people because um I think I can go out on a limb and say because autistic people are bottom-up thinkers. And I think there's values to that. There's values to bottom-up and top-down thinking. They think of like sensory and how they function internal stuff bottom up. I think psychopaths do as well. So like intelligent and self-aware autistic people tend to really get along with us. Again, Dawn, right? Uh we have a bottom-up way of thinking for certain classes of things, so we can grep the way that autistic people think, or close enough. You know, you go, "Oh, I can see where you're coming from. I wouldn't do it that way because I know better, but I see how you ended up there." And autistic people are not used to that anyway. But yeah, they're bottom-up thinking and they see these things as a consequence from their internal machinations instead of seeing their own agency. Um, and again, that's very valuable. Autistic people see a lot of things that allistic people, neurotypical and flatly neurotypical people miss in their own lives. That this uncomfortable thing brings you to this place, etc. Or this environment of people results in this, when that one asshole who would just not listen to anybody at work makes it worse for everybody. It's always it's either the psychopath or the autistic person that can tell and wishes someone would fucking listen. It's like, we don't need to tear this person down, but yeah, if they keep this up, you should find somebody better. But until then, like, we shouldn't put up with it either. Like, yeah, I know you don't want to be mean, but like, they don't care if they're mean. They're doing it 24/7. And autistic people feel differently about that, but they see the exact same sort of phenomenon from that asshole at work that no one wants to push back at, right? Even if they have different strategies, they see it. And I think that in spite of that having value, um, I think that causes them to miss that people treat OCD people and ADHD people, they mistreat us the same. And I don't get to try to bond with that commonality. And so I'm not, it's very frustrating to me because I'm not autistic. So my head is not there. My head is, what are people doing to me? And yeah, it's really funny. I've been navigating that at first, when my couple year up until I guess a year ago, for a couple years, I had a very NPD-like behavior of like, I would end up projecting my problems onto autistic people of what I thought was in my life because I could see the friction they were giving me, and I wasn't seeing the good with the bad. I was splitting. Um, but nowadays I see how I get along with Dawn. I see how I don't get along with some other autistic people. Um, 'Cause if I'm honest, normies, neurotypical people, um, they're easier for me to start a conversation with or connect in some other ways, but I find it's harder to get closer to them to autistic people. So I don't think it's one way or the other, right? Um, anyway, it's still frustrated. I can't. I can't gripe about how people treat me for my OCD with the people I thought would be like, yeah, they do that to me too, because they don't think of what people, that's not where their mind is. They're not thinking of what people do to them. They think about their senses and internal machinations. They're bottom up. On That's a spiel. No, I say a lot of that because I genuinely don't want autistic people thinking I fucking hate them or something. Um, I have too, I have too much common ground. I don't want to put people off. Um, in the same way that I'm tired of like, if it's somebody I actually want to get to know or somebody I'm growing to learn, I want to hold on to, and I'm like, will telling them I'm a psychopath be helpful here? Is that the right thing? Will this make things either give more depth or make certain things less complicated? Or am I just likely to just give this person a reason to scrutinize every fucking thing I do? And am I going to just disaster this for no reason? And I'm not saying I don't want to be, I'm not saying I don't ultimately prefer just being unmasked, but there's still some people that like everything else is great. If I knew that this was the one thing that was screwed up, no, I don't want to do that. It it's already good enough. It's fine. I can be content. Maybe. Maybe. I don't know. I think that's the conclusion of that spiel for now. Like summation of my um of the difficulties of like when and why I shouldn't mask and how and what it benefits me, what it doesn't. Um like I'll always mask at work, but I like to be a saleswoman and that's actually part of the game. But the difference there is if you're in sales, you're all part of the game and everybody knows it. And it's a much healthier environment for me in that way. And then gender stuff too. I consider going into sales as part of my gender transition because a quote unquote type A woman is anywhere from neutral to like supported and well received. Your sales manager wants to see people making badass sales, and they're going to see some people are going to be more receptive to the directness, the typically associated directness or maybe even crassness of men. And some people are going to be like, yeah, the fact that you're a pretty girl is going to get people to listen to you. And I love that you don't shy away from taking advantage of that to some reasonable degree. Your numbers prove it. You
Hmm.
know, it's outcome oriented in a place where you're supposed to be transactional. You're making a sale, and it kind of all fits there at once. Personality, gender, etc. Ugh. Uh, didn't I want to go into how NPD and psychopathy have screwed with my gender identity? Yeah. So I'm gonna start with like gonna bring it back to my dad. So I was talking about that now ex-friend again. I cold blocked him in the middle of that conversation with our mutual friend. I just got fed up and I blocked him without explanation. And I'd actually sent him some pretty funny memes and banter that day. So behaviorally, that was kind of, you could call that psychopathic. Like friendly 1 second. Oh, you're blocked. I didn't even tell you. But I still think it was the right call because if I didn't, he's going to try to drag me into his pity party. And I'm tired of that, etc. But if I told my dad, if he was still alive and I told him I did it in the situation, he would have been proud of me. And as I view it, for the right reasons. And that ultimately calls back to values and reasoning I actually hold myself. I know my dad in his fucked up, damaged way tried to do right by me. And but so there's a plenty of good and plenty of bad. But yeah, so that kind of way of thinking stereotypically in society is more masculine, even if not for the selfishness, but for more that it's self-centered, right? Will stereotype women as being like, "Oh no." Oh, do you know what? Even as far as like the conversation I was having with the girl, she's like, "Just blocking him makes me feel sick because I can't imagine him how bad it'll hurt him." And I'm like, I don't really want to hurt him, but I don't fucking care at this point. Jesus Christ. And that is seen as more masculine. And so, you know, I would falsely attribute that to being a man and like my father, and that being coming from my father, it helped over unify it. And um he was definitely narcissistic and psychopathic too. But um so uh where was I going with that? Just that, I got it from him. But I don't just mean like my personality disorders, but a way to try to attempt to healthily interact with while having this self-centered mindset to not let take people take advantage of you. Because like I guess the way my dad would say it is like, or this is my paraphrasing of it, but this is the kind of value he held like that sometimes you need to be an asshole. And sometimes being an asshole is like the correct decisions. It's better than other things. And in this case, maybe somebody would view me as an asshole for just blocking this person without explanation. But if I told somebody that's my friend that, they'd be like, good for you. Especially if they knew him, they'd be like, yeah, yeah, I don't know how you put up with him for so long, and I know how. There were a lot of good things about him, and he was getting better in some other ways. And I'm like, okay, uh, maybe this will get better at some point, but it's not worth my time right now. It's not worth my time anymore. And and so yeah, I absorbed a lot of these things from my father, and it gave me these sort of daddy issues. And trying to untangle that of like that all of this at once. Oh no, I became like my father. Or oh my God, my dad brainwashed me into being a man and it wasn't quite that, right? Or and just since I had never looked into myself critically and with clarity about that, I didn't have any of the answers for what is actually true to me, uh, even though I'm a woman, I feel I have a masculine core that's as important as my feminine core. Um, at this point, that's my view. But coming into it, started transition, I'm like, oh my God, femininity feels like the plague. I could still do these things and be a man or a man with notable but important differences. And then I started to embrace femininity. And then I swung the other way and went, oh, man, I need to root all this masculinity out. I've deluded myself, and my dad helped me. And again, it's not all one way or the other. Uh, some of that I would say is more narcissistically enabled or influenced. Um, if you want to be like psychobabbly, it like it's a because it's attachment stuff. But it's like, oh yeah, well, I want my father to be proud of me. I want to be the son he always wanted or whatever, etc. And also the mask I had grown into when, aha, people love this and this works for me. This gets me what I want. But at the same time, uh, the psychopathic ability to really, really memory hole stuff and so strongly in the moment before you're starting to exit playground stage, before you enter self-awareness from a reckoning, where you just like become the thing that you're trying to be, and you literally forget who you are. You're not playing the part, you're being the part. And that sort of stuff put me so far away from my feelings. I had known trans people since I was 20. I had known trans women since I was 22, and I had been dating them. I've been having sex with them since I was 23 and dating them since I was 26 or 7. And so I started transitioning at 31. And I would have being among trans people, especially intelligent ones, and you're presented with these breakdowns of gender, you know, that you can't just ignore. I would get into these really long gender spiels. Like I could tell there was something different about me, but I had put myself so far away from my feelings and identified so strongly and unfortunately successfully with the opposite, with the falsehood, that I could not unmask myself. I could not unmask this pantomime um and see the difference. And it's a crazy story. Ha what broke me out of that. And I could credit my psychopathic tendencies for also helping me out of it. So I guess some of that is knowing yourself and leaning into your um you know I want to say advantages. That's not the right word, but leaning into what you're good at. Because so what happened was, as I was at a friend's house near Philadelphia, and I was bored, so I got on this group chat on this encrypted platform called Jitsi, Jitsi. It's still around, but trans women, they were mostly trans women. Actually, it was all trans women because there were two uncracked trans eggs in there. One of them was me, and one of them was another friend. And we're all talking, and I'm talking to this girl, and I'm bored, and it's 10:30 at night, and I find out she is just over the border in New Jersey. And I go and pick her up at a group home at like 11:30 at night, just over the border in New Jersey, which is something no normal person would do. And I bring her back to my house, and we're hanging out and talking or whatever. And I get into one of my gender spiels, and um, one second, door. All right, I'm good. So what we'll start it over. Maybe it'll make it easier to clip. Yeah, no, I picked up this girl uh at like 11:30 at night just over the border in New Jersey at a group home. She was young. That's something that no normal person would do. the way I got myself to found this girl, got myself into the situation is the way no normal person would do. And bring her back to my house, and we're talking, and I get onto one of my stupid gender rants. And in slightly, only slightly nicer words, she basically says, "Why, I have a bottle of gender. Why don't you just shut up and try some?" You know, she had a bottle of her estrogen pills. And at first I was a little nervous, and then our mutual friend is just like, one pill won't do anything. And she was right. That was all I needed to try it. And I had happened to take it with my nighttime meds. So I was unsure at first, but there was a rightness and a calmness to my brain. So I had to try it again. I'm like, I need to know if that was a fluke. What the fuck? So I take another one the next day. I steal a pill from her bottle without even telling her because I don't want her to know. And and now I know I wanted to love who was in the mirror, but I experienced it for the first time in my life as loving the person in the mirror. And I went, and from all the trans people I knew, even if I didn't understand the journey I was going to set myself on, I just knew, fuck, I'm transgender. That's what that means. People don't talk about it like that, especially not after taking uh, hormones from the opposite biological sex. And again, like the receptiveness to being bullied into this, because I'm like, you know, that's fair. I'm being dumb. I don't know if a normal person would do that. Um, my strengths, yeah. And I think that's another strength. Can take harsh negative criticism. But that moment of just getting unmasked and going, oh fuck. I basically almost went full in. I completely committed. I was a little terrified because I'm like, being trans sucks. This is gonna be insane and a nightmare. Oh my God. And that's what worried me, you know. And am I gonna lose friends? Yada yada, all the people, all the problems trans people have coming out. And but I just also went, this is one of the first things that have like improved me without a shadow of a doubt in so long. And the evidence is fucking conclusive. And I just committed to it 100%. I was experimenting with it a little, then I went and got on a prescription. Um, and that same drive when my doctor was what we would call Hun dosing me, giving me almost no estrogen. He put me down to half a milligram of estrogen a day. And I just went, fuck that. And I went and found another doctor. But they're just like, this is do or die. This is obviously the do. And I don't want to die. So I'm going to do. And it didn't matter how frightening or how uncomfortable or whatever. I just forced myself to face whatever because it was clearly the biggest right decision I had made in years, and I couldn't prove it wrong. And I also attribute my psychopathy to enabling that. So while it put me so far away from it, I my feelings and I had to get bullied into trying estrogen to find out and then discover my feelings later. Like I say that my egg got cracked. I really accepted that I was a woman like started accepting it. Started like 9 months into hormones. Normally happens the other way around. I was showing up in girl clothes at a Kohl's to go buy more girl clothes. Like a year or more earlier than a lot of trans women I know did. And it was actually, I had no idea what people's reactions were going to be. And sometimes that concern was legitimate early in transition. One time I went with my friends to Kohl's and we were trying on clothes and we were both in the changing room. And Kohl's at that point had taken the gender markers off the changing rooms. They were just changing rooms. But she heard somebody say, "Is there a man in there?" And that employee was trying to sniff me out. I had to, I had to talk my friend into helping me sneak out of the changing room without her seeing. So sometimes those fears were unfortunately very founded, but I just still fucking did it because I knew it was the right way. And B, I knew I wasn't going to get accustomed to it if I didn't do it. The longer I put it off. And I think, again, I think that's something that's psychopathic, the idea of being so willing to put yourself through something uncomfortable that, at least at first, that you know is right because you're like gaming yourself. In a way, you're manipulating yourself, but you're gaming yourself. You're just like, I need to get used to this bullshit. It's bullshit, but I need to get used to it. It turned out to not be eventually. I don't have any worries like that. I passed very well. I have no concerns about that anymore. But that jump started my experience. That gave me ultimately a better experience with transitioning, even if it was stressful, and gave me a lot of knowledge and experience I could pass on to other trans women really early on, a lot quicker than most. So it was incredibly valuable. Um, there's not a lot of positives that my NPD helped me with there. It confounded a lot of things. I've said that as I've gotten healthier, more self-aware, I've become less narcissistic and more psychopathic, and I think that makes sense. I'm still a totally extra bitch. Um, like it's clear kind of where I started from if you know what to look for. Um, like when Dorian comes into the server and talks about stuff, and I'm like, yeah, dude, you fucking stick it to them. You know, a lot of the other people there aren't don't I don't think have quite the same reaction I do to like you people are actually coming for your downfall and you're not just sticking the landing, you're landing on their face when you do it. Keep it up, motherfucker. And that's still a part of me, but that didn't become a happier or healthier part of me until I untangled a lot of the just like basic identity and gender identity stuff and daddy issues and stuff and mommy issues. Like it made feeling being a woman icky in some ways when I did womanly things that I didn't think were great, or it just at least reminded me of my mom, even if they were fine. And once I was able to be confidently able to be my more authentic self and know what that was, um, then I was doing it less for, I would say I stopped doing things for narcissistic reasons as much, but I allowed myself to be more narcissistic about certain things instead, because that's just part of my personality. Instead, I'm not trying to fill this hole. I just I just love being flagrant. I love adding imminence and gravitas to things, either just for the fun of it, the kiddish nature, the aha, this is the best thing ever. Everyone likes a hype beast, but also the you can pay that energy forward. It helps people push through their difficulties when they see somebody who's exuberantly about themselves in a healthy way. They go, yeah, wow, that looks great. I should try it. Um, it's the healthy, equal but opposite to force that enthusiasm. It's projecting a little, but it's to stoke the coals within people, either for my own enjoyment or to pass that along. Because I know it, and yeah, again, I don't think there's an easy way to make any of that succinct. The boundary between daddy and mommy issues, personality disorders, uh, self-awareness, gender struggles, for me are like disgustingly interweaved. At this point, it's fine, but it's been hell a handbasket and a glass of wine to get here. It's just, uh, and I guess that makes sense because the context of all that is me. You know, it's not, I don't think it's from some like deep philosophical reason. I think the reason is because all those things take place in me and they're all things that are important to me. You know, full stop, done. That's it. It's just how it be. But I still, I wish I could actually be more, I wouldn't say honest, but more open and direct about that kind of stuff publicly. Some of it I can be because there are some similarities of like there's a lot of trans women who are more avoidant or just have more alexithymia. There's many that would describe it as it's not that they felt wrong as a man, they just actually feel right as a woman for once. They feel more right as a woman. There's a lot of people who have that in common with me. So they've had similar like start tiptoed into it and went, "Oh no, that's right. I'm a woman. Why did I do this to myself?" Um, but it's but anywhere where it converges with the stereotypes of psychopathy, where I'm just like, I'm glad I can embrace a little remorseless selfishness when I'm getting rid of somebody who's a genuine drag on my fucking life. And again, not because I don't want him to be my friend, but that sadness is the way he would, unintentionally manipulate me and keep me around. That's why this friend of ours wouldn't want to leave. I have the freedom to just be like, to be selfish and angry that he won't be my friend, but not sad that he's gone. And that's stuff I can't be as open about. And yet I'm proud of reintegrating that stuff because it felt so masculine and or like my father. But I like again, I believe what my father told me that sometimes you need to be an asshole and sometimes being an asshole is the best decision. Sometimes. And that came from my father, and I do actually think that's a masculine value. But I don't know. I'm tepid about being as direct about that publicly, even though I want to. Um, because I'm proud of being a woman with self-determination and such, and not needing to be told to follow what feels right as opposed to stop telling myself to cut myself down, etc., and really learning what's right for me. That I'm proud of. But again, the language I would really like to use might come out as cold or calculating or very transactional to people. And but that's honestly the way I think, the way I process a lot of things. Like even if I'm in my emotional self, it's still the words that go through my head, still the lens I see the world in. And it sucks to hide that to any degree. So it's still intertwined uh to this day. Like I said, the good and the bad. I'm proud of being the kind of woman I am, and A, my psychopathy, and B, my father trying to encourage the positive aspects of it, and my narcissism is something I cherish, something I value, something I'm proud of. Uh, I think the big turnaround for me was I realized that strong women and good men are just as rare in this world. And because that pulled it out of a narcissistic lensing. I was battling with pumping myself up, and then I would see other trans women or other women as lesser than me for not having that drive. And seeing it that way is just about the value of what I am to myself and others, not necessarily in comparison to other people and not needing to be above other people. And once started internalizing that, I was able to really identify with a lot of it again and embody it. Uh, all in all, I am still happy to be who and what I am. It's just been long, complicated. We actually had somebody on the server note that he related to a lot of things I said, and he thought of himself as like the opposite of trans. And I get that because that's what I thought at first. And I think for a lot of the same reasons. And learning how those are not incompatible has been part of my enlightenment. But it was nice to see because that meant he saw the real me, you know, especially less filtered on our server. It was very nice. And the uniqueness of my struggle, if it meant that I had to face that and unravel it, you know. That's also something I don't usually get. Not even if I don't hide it, you know, people they'll get it on the surface, but they don't really get it, and you can tell even if you can't feel it. Um, like Dawn, our friend Dawn is very good about that when you're talking with her, and she goes, you know, like I've come from the opposite. She's smart to use her opposite perspective to flip it, and that helps both for her understanding and connecting with her. But she will often say stuff like, you know, like I've come from the opposite direction, so it's so fascinating to me that you did this. But again, she sees the value of us both trying to approach this middle path, having come from extremes. And I you don't get that from most people. I think, period. Normies, autistic, psychopaths, whoever. Um, So yeah, I still don't get it. Even when I get to be unfiltered, that's a part of myself that doesn't really feel acknowledged or understood in a tangible way. And I really can't place why it's frustrating. I guess that's just the human thing of like feeling misunderstood or not feeling understood sucks. And I'm not sure what to do with that because it's like frustration. Maybe I'm just assuming I should feel something different. And what I feel is frustration, and most people might feel is beside themselves or uh or disappointed or something. And I'm just, I tried, and I'm sitting here angry about it. Oh, I think that's like complete. There's no way to make any of that succinct. It's almost the complete. It's a pretty good picture of my actual like struggles as a whole.
Yeah. I think of it as like a very comprehensive answer to my question, what is it like to be you?
Yeah, that's exactly why I thought so hard about it. You know, yeah, why is it bemusing? I said I was going to get into it. That's why. Uh, and that is not a short answer. Like I almost don't care how disconnected from yourself you are, that's enough for you to go, wow, that's not how I thought that was gonna fucking work. I don't see anybody being prepared for that or it panning out how they thought, even if they had a good idea. Because, I had a ton of trans people to lean on and stuff, and that did not give me a good roadmap for myself.
Hmm.
It did partially, but uh even if I ended up in a similar place and going, I'm she, her, or she, they, I'm just a woman. The way I got there and the identity issues and the feelings I had to process, or the way in which I had to process them, that's often been vastly different. And again, like, um, and some of it was just unmasking myself.
Do you want to end with like any particular thoughts, any ideas, any things, and we should talk again. This will not be the end, but just the end for today.
Yeah. Yeah, I saved that bit for the last because that's my life. That's not my life story, but it's my life story. I can't distill that so easily, and that's not the point, right? The point is to undistill it. Um, what would I say? I would like to tell people I would like to give a message to people to, I would like to affirm people with the message that they do not need to look to someone else or a higher power to find meaning or direction because they themselves and every experience they have is meaningful, as simple as it means something to them, and that is the meaning. And the same way someone means something to them, and or somebody does something for them, and it means something to them. And that is the meaning. And I would like more people to try to carry that because while somewhat self-centered, it is wholly compatible with, you know, collectivism and other people. It's
Ethics.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's it's my way of bridging the gap between individualism and collectivism because once you acknowledge that, you can say the same thing I say, and that somebody else's experiences are inherently as meaningful because they simply are. That it is, that is the tautology of how we are ontological, that we are the seat of meaning. The stars, if we weren't here, nobody were here to see them or name them. They would just be big incandescent balls of gas doing nuclear fusion. It is because we look into that starry night and feel that sense of depth or heaviness or awe. It is because we name them, maybe put astrology signs to them that give them meaning. Until we did that, it did not give them, they did not have meaning. And that meaning to us is meaningful because it's meaning. But it is also individually true that when you do that and you go out into the woods on a nice clear night and you look into the sky to try to take it in, nobody can experience that for you, and that is meaningful for you in a way, whether it be on that night or who you're with or where you are or what you're going through, or just the fact that it's happening to you then and there. Nobody else can go through that for you, and that is meaningful. And again, I think if people took that sort of mindset, we would care about ourselves and each other more. Because when someone would tell us to go against what is actually meaningful to us, what we actually care about, what we actually value, we would resist it more instinctively and naturally. But this idea gives us a compass of how to do that either strategically or proportionally. That's like my little excerpt of my own life philosophy. And I hope it's obvious that it circles back to like the hyper real and stuff, because that's an acknowledgement of the hyper real without rejection. You know, the things that are meaningful to us can be meaningful to us, but we shouldn't have to pretend and simulate that there's something else either. I didn't intend to bring it back together like
I
that,
love it
but
though.
but
You did it successfully.
yeah, but but I think that might be able to help some people. And if nothing else, food for thought.
Yeah, food for thought. Absolutely. Well, thank you again for chatting me. I loved it. I have notes on notes on notes
You're
to
welcome.
reference. Yeah, I ran out of room. I was like writing sideways. I was like
Oh my
I
gosh.
I really appreciate it. I'm definitely going to try to expose myself more to Jean-Paul Baudrillard.
No,
But
I don't think he's Paul. I think it's just Jean Baudrillard.
oh, Jean, okay, Jean Baudrillard. Um, and yeah, I'm super happy to learn all the things that you have taught me today and exposed me to the very interesting things for your willingness to be vulnerable, to talk about personal things, to talk about things that you have processed, spent some time processing, things that are more recently being processed. And I appreciate you putting yourself out there. I do think that it's kind of like you say, people who like you can listen to people talk and think, I used to think that way, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
I
then
like I like presenting the process. Maybe because
yeah,
maybe people can learn from it. They're not going to do
exactly.
the same thing, but they'll go, there is a path forward and I should take it and find it.
Yeah, the
Or
process
find the
with
thing.
without hopefully becoming untethered and becoming procession. Am I right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I appreciate burying myself and having somebody else having your perspective on Jean Baudrillard's work, uh, because that's like almost meta and mesa at once. It's meta that brings you back down immediately. It's it's a it's very heady stuff, and how it how it pertains to law and morality. Oh, one last thing I wanted to note. Of
Hmm.
course, at almost the very beginning of this, two psychopaths go, I don't get how people sort things into good or bad. Like, but we went a lot deeper than that, but I think it is all, but I think it's also pretty funny.
It is pretty
Uh,
funny. I always think that people enjoy those parts about this, like two psychopaths trying to make sense of things.
of
Yeah.
good and bad and right and wrong. Yeah. Some
Yeah,
of it's been my attempt to understand people's idea of right and wrong for my own reasons,
sure.
you know, my own compass.
As you said from the very beginning, you are a curious, curiosity is something that you define yourself by. So
Absolutely.
I can see it. All right. Well, thank you
Well,
so much. And
absolutely.
anytime you want to come chat me again, just let me know and we'd love to have you again.
All right. See you around.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Chat you soon.